L'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame Greffier.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité. Présent. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Gouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen. Présent. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le Député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le Député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Morel. Madame le Député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayer. Monsieur le Député Ward. Madame le Député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le Député Gardner. Monsieur le Député Ghost. Monsieur le Député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Mézec.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Joseph. Monsieur le Député Balash. Monsieur le Député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le Député Poré. Monsieur le Député War.
Présent.
Madame le Député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le Député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le Député Curtis. Madame le Député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le Député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le Député Jehan.
Présente.
Madame le Député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le Député Howell. Monsieur le Député Binet. Monsieur le Député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le Député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Curtis. Madame le Député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le Député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Andrews.
Monsieur le Doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est en accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être, au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plût de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle du siècle. Amen.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Laurent est malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Député Morel.
So Deputy Morel is attending some family business, and I ask that he is excused. Thank you.
Does members agree that he may be excusé? Very well, excusé.
Monsieur le Député Ward.
Sir, Deputy Ward is away with the CPA as head of mission for the Cayman Islands general election, and so he is away on state's business.
Very well, state's business.
Madame le Deputy Gardener.
Sir, Deputy Gardner is at a medical appointment in the United Kingdom and asked to be excused. She will be back tomorrow.
Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Ghost.
So Deputy Gorst is travelling on State's business, and I've omitted to get details of that, but he is away on State's business.
Right. Is he away for the entirety of the sitting, or is he back
I
to
believe so, sir. I think he's away.
State's business?
Monsieur le Deputy Joseph.
Therefore,
Madame le Deputy Poré.
les États sont constitués. Very well. Firstly, I'm sure members will join with me in welcoming His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor to the Assembly this morning. Secondly, from the Chair, I make the following announcement. I am pleased to inform members that His Majesty the King has approved the appointment of Mr. Robert James MacRae, the current Deputy Bailiff, as Bailiff of Jersey following my retirement on the 19th of October this year. Mr. MacRae has previously served as Attorney General, and it is expected that he will take the oath of office of Bailiff on Friday, the 24th of October, and we wish him well. And lastly, members may have noticed that the Assembly is somewhat fuller than it normally is, and we are delighted to welcome our students from the Lycée Jacques-Cartier in Saint-Malo. They have come to observe for a short period this Assembly, so I know all members will be on their best behaviour and join me in welcoming them. Very well. There is a number of subordinate actions have been tabled under B. C, a number of documents have been presented or laid, and under D, the following have been tabled. Social rents plan to reduce rental stress for tenants, P29, lodged by Deputy Kovac. Draft income support Jersey amendment regulations, P30, lodged by the Minister for Social Security. A draft highways law, Jersey amendment regulations, P31, lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure. Review of the impact of increases to the minimum wage on recruitment and retention of trainees, P32, lodged by Deputy Andrews, and Chief Minister Pole, P33, lodged by Deputy Moore. In accordance with Standing Order 34.1, promotion of political education, lodged by Deputy Andrews, P1 of 2025, has been withdrawn. There is nothing under F, G and H. Under I, answers to written questions have been tabled, and members can read those. And we come now to oral questions. And the first question is asked by Deputy Coles of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what progress has been made since the Assembly's adoption of P31 2024 as amended, which included a request that the Council of Ministers bring forward a proposal for the potential approaches to the decriminalisation, legalisation and regulation of cannabis?
Minister.
Sir, I'm able to inform the Deputy and members that policy work is in progress to present proposals to the Assembly focusing on two principal areas. Firstly, adjusting cannabis possession laws to reduce the criminalisation of small-scale personal use, and exploring models for the regulated supply of non-medical cannabis. This rather complex policy area involves significant considerations related to health, community safety, the economy, and various international obligations. So, sir, in order to ensure properly informed decision-making, it's crucial for us to understand the benefits, the risks and mitigations for each option. And to assist that process, I can also confirm that public consultation and engagement on these issues and options is planned to take place next month. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Deputy.
Does the Minister believe that he has sufficient resources to bring these proposals to the Assembly within the allotted time frame?
Sadly, I'm unable to guarantee that. I'm hopeful, but I have to confess that we're not as well resourced as I would like us to be, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Part B that was approved included an amendment that included total acceptable cultivation allowance. I wonder if the Minister could update whether the work stream he's mentioned so far includes that of the growing of recreational cannabis and what progress has been made on that part of the work stream. Thank you, sir.
To be honest, sir, I only got a general update as to the state of affairs at the moment, and it would be difficult for me to look at specifics. I can make that specific inquiry and let the deputy know. So.
Supplemental. Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. What areas of policy has the Minister most impressed with, and is he keen to have the Assembly support?
So I think my support would go for a generalised and sensible approach to the entire situation. It's a complicated one, and it affects our relationship with the UK, so it's got to be very carefully handled. So as far as I'm concerned, I'll just be looking at the overall effect. So I don't have any specific area that I feel strongly about. So.
Very much. Very well. Question 2 that Deputy Andrews will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise whether the Council of Ministers has a target for net inward migration, and if not, why not?
So I understand Deputy Ellis will be taking the question. Thank you.
Very well. Yes, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. The Council of Ministers does not have a numeric target for net inward migration. It is a priority for this Council of Ministers to address the needs of our population now and in the future. And the 2024 annual report on the Common Population Policy set out competing demands of the need for economic growth, the need to maintain affordable living standards, and the need to prepare for our growing ageing population. Population policies have an important role to play in all of these areas. However, ministers consider that these population policies need to be flexible so that they can quickly respond to short-term pressures while also supporting long-term aims. A numeric target is not helpful in this situation. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. What figure is being used to model demand for future services and resources? For example, when building new hospitals, schools, looking at water, supplies and drains. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's difficult to measure at the moment because our population over the last 6 years has changed. So from 2029 onwards, the island's total population has remained relatively static, as has the size of the working population. However, we do have some better data coming from Statistics Jersey, so we are able to be much more responsive than we ever have in the past.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. So when looking at long-term projections and building in those plans, previously the figure of 325 had been used and continued to be used even after it was no longer seen as a target or an appropriate figure for what was actually happening on the ground. It was still being used to put into plans for the future. Is that still the case?
So we do still have the 325 figure. We also have some other figures as well to ensure that we can plan for whatever is needed. So we look at a variety of different figures depending on what may or may not happen and what the need that we may have to respond to would be based on those figures.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I'm a little confused by that answer. Perhaps the Minister could explain when long-term planning decisions are being made around things like service provision and so on, how is it possible to have a variety of different figures for net migration or total population anticipated in the future? How can that be the basis for decision making?
So we have to be quite mindful that obviously population is always changing on a year-to-year basis, and given what's happened in the last 5 to 6 years, it is fairly unpredictable. So we are sticking to the 325 figure as the base figure. However, we have to be mindful that things could change and they can increase, and so we have to be as responsive as possible to those numbers.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. The list of reasons that the Minister gave for flexibility were all connected in one way or another to the economy and to meeting needs of society. Does the Minister accept that there is a a limit that applies in the other direction as well, which is to do with the environment and to do with the social need to maintain cohesion and so on, that would mean that we would not simply meet every need that would come from economic pressures.
Yes, sir, we are mindful of that, and that is why we've done things like ensure that our new control of housing and work laws can be as responsive as possible, and obviously monitoring, I think, is the key. I think we've never had such rich data as we do now. Previous governments, even before us, always had to wait until the census. We are now able to access a lot better data. So that is something that we are mindful of. Thank you, sir.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. How is the Assistant Chief Minister planning for potential forecasts where we could be potentially seeing net zero migration forecasts, and what are the implications for individuals who are part of Jersey's labour market, and could they potentially see personal income tax and social security contributions increase?
So a lot of those things I can't comment on because that would be a whole Council of Ministers approach, especially regarding income tax and things like that. However, I think we do all have to work in a holistic way across all departments and find ways to make Jersey as attractive as possible to ensure that people come here. We recognise that obviously post-Brexit, it's not as easy for people to come to the island as it used to be. And I think that's where we've got other projects within government that are looking at ensuring that Jersey is much more attractive, whether that is to do with affordable housing or with our actual infrastructure. I know there's currently a consultation out for Fort Regent, for example. So they are all things that we are mindful of, and I think it needs to be a whole cross-government approach. Thank you, sir.
So Mayor, I have discovered, having made inquiries about Deputy Gorst's absence, I have inadvertently misled the House. I believed he was travelling on State's business, but he is returning from a personal trip today, so he is not on State's business, and I believe he will be here tomorrow, so I do apologise, that's my mistake. I thought he was.
He's returning from a personal trip?
He's returning from a personal trip, yes, sir, so he is not excusé.
No, it'll be
So I apologise.
en défaut.
Yes.
Very well. We'll amend the records to reflect that accordingly. And we come now to question 3. The Deputy Renner will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain whether it is his assessment that there are systemic gender inequalities in Jersey's health system, and what proposals, if any, there are to improve health outcomes for women?
Sir, could I just ask if the Deputy would be happy for the Assistant Minister with special responsibility for that to answer the questions?
No, sir.
Very well, Minister, then it's for you to answer, I'm afraid.
That's very unhelpful, sir, because the response has been printed out in very small print and my eyesight isn't up to it. But I'll just go through the question again, sorry. Yeah. Do I think there are gender inequalities? I think there are inequalities in the health system, sir. There are other inequalities as well in the mental health sphere. Men tend to commit suicide twice as regularly as women. So there are all sorts of different areas in health that need attention, but I do accept that there are some issues about women's health that need specific attention, sir. What are we doing? Well, we've got 3 specific areas that we've been working on, and there's been a needs assessment that's carried out, and that's going to be looked at, and further work will take place. Like I say, it's work that I delegated to my Assistant Minister, and I have to say she's closer to it than I am, sir.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir, just to explain that normally when I've been confronted with the situation, the Minister approaches me beforehand to ask whether they would like the question, whether I would accept the question being taken by somebody else. That didn't occur this occasion. I guess that the Minister has pointed out that there are other inequalities, and I wonder whether he would indicate, as Minister, where he places the systemic gender inequalities in his list of priorities to address.
This might prove controversial, sir, but I don't think I have a list of priorities. I think what we're trying to do in health is make sure that everybody's health is looked after. I've mentioned suicide. You can look at child cancer. Why would that not be a priority? I'm very keen to make sure that from a political point of view, do everything we can to make the health service as good as we can for everybody, sir.
Well, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister aware from the Public Health Strategic Needs Assessment on Women's Health that it was highlighted within that report that the overwhelming burden of care needs falling the majority on women, that was actually pulled out as a factor in poorer health outcomes. And that's something that the Minister could potentially be working on across ministerial portfolios. Has he noted that comment in the report, and what does he intend to do about it?
Yes, I accept all of that, but as I've said, we've got a number of difficulties in the health department, not least of which is funding. And I'll remind the Assembly that without money you can do very little. The budget for this year is already under acute pressure. If we want to do something more for women, which I'd very much like to do, we're going to need more money. We'll be addressing that problem as we go through the year. There'll be a public consultation to ask the public what sort of health service they want and how much they're prepared to pay for it. And we'll be asking questions, sort of questions that will give us an indication as to where that money needs to come from, sir. So it's a complicated question, very keen to get women's health right, but we will need more money, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Doublé.
Does the Minister agree to ensure that the money that is available is targeted towards those who have the greatest need? And in some respects, single-parent households and single pensioner households, again, were highlighted in this report. Could the Minister ensure that his funds are targeted to the greatest need?
As a general statement, I think that's fair. They will always go to the greatest need, and I have to say that's not an easy task, because there are I get my inbox is full of very, very compelling stories, sir, and it's not easy. But as a general statement, I'm very happy to support that, sir.
Well, Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. As the political leader of his organisation, how does the Deputy demonstrate the behaviours that show a good example and encourage others to break down gender inequality?
Could I just ask to qualify what that question means? Is it what
Well, I think is, do you lead by example, and how do you show people that they should break down gender inequality? Is that fair, Deputy Moore?
I don't think I make any particular effort to do that, sir, because I think I like to consider that my conduct is reasonable in all respects. I don't think I have a particular problem in that area. And like I say, I could list you half a dozen areas where I want to put a particular emphasis on conduct. So no, sorry if that's not the right answer, sir, but no.
There is no right answer. There's only your answer, Minister.
Well, let's hope that's right, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps the next question should be then, has the Deputy taken any time to consider a gender-sensitive approach to his policy making, or does he perhaps consider that he may need some training in this area?
I don't know what to make of that at all, sir. Do I need training? I'm afraid I don't think I do. I think I take a civilised approach to things, and I find that question actually quite tasteless, sir. That's just a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Sir, I do think it would be good if the Deputy would take back that statement. I think he is actually suggesting that a Deputy should not ask a reasonable question.
Well, I think the position simply is, I think the comment on the quality of a question, if I've allowed it, I've allowed it, and that's the end of it. Deputy, any comment should be, any adverse comment should be withdrawn, I think. So if you'd like to withdraw your observation that it was tasteless, that would be well.
I just think people are busy. I'll withdraw it. I don't have to say I don't really feel that I should, but
well, you've withdrawn it, so let's
I'll
leave it at
withdraw
that.
it.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister accept that Jersey, like many other Western systems, has a health system built by men for men, and that the service he leads continues to take a male as default approach?
So I think that perhaps may have been the case historically. I don't think that's where we are now. Working well with this executive leadership team, they're all very, very balanced people, and I think they're all very keen to take a balanced approach to delivering a health service. So I don't think that's a problem that we suffer with currently. I mean, there might be issues still to address in terms of gender equality, but I think that the people that are leading the organisation now don't have a problem with that at all. They recognise it and they're very keen to deal with it. So,
Supplemental question, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. What practical kind of on-the-ground examples can the Minister give to back up that position, that we don't have a system built by men for men that continues to take a male as default approach?
we've got a number of females in key roles, sir. I can't think of any particular example. And I don't know why I would. As I say, there's a balanced team of people taking a balanced view of things, recognising that there are gender inequalities and doing their best to resolve them, sir.
Well, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister please tell us specifically what he is doing to improve the confidence of women in Jersey's maternity services?
On a personal level, absolutely nothing, but there is a team of people. We've got somebody new running the maternity service who I've got a great deal of confidence in, and she's busy doing her job, sir. So I can't go around prioritising every single area of health. There are lots of areas of health that require particular attention, and I'm trying to deal with them in an even-handed and balanced way across the piece, sir. So, no, I don't do anything specific, it has to be said.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. The Minister is on record as saying that to reinstitute the home birth service, women would have to pay for that service. Is that still the case?
I've no recollection of making that as an absolute statement, sir. I have suggested that we're under financial pressure and that we're going to be looking at that, as we're going to be looking at an awful lot of things. Like I've said, we are under huge budgetary pressure. There's only so much we can do with that money. I intend to have a consultation with the public to point these things out, to let them know where we are, to ask them what sort of health service they would like, and ask them how they're going to pay for it. And I can think of a number of very, very pressing areas that require money. So I've not made a statement to that effect, an absolute statement, but I have made it plain that we'd be looking at all areas of healthcare and deciding which areas are priority and which aren't, sir.
Right, I have Deputy Wilson, then final supplementary. No other questions? Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could I first of all raise the defo on Deputy Joseph?
Yes, that was your question, though.
Sorry.
Yes, the defo is raised on Deputy Joseph,
way,
and please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Could I ask the Health Minister what particular health outcomes he would like to see for women in contact with our health service?
Good ones, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wilson?
Thank you, sir. As part of the health strategy work, could the Minister explain what has been done to assure himself that there is a focus on meeting women's health needs?
I think everybody's aware that there's a particular focus on women's health needs, sir. And we've got a very public meeting coming up only next week with scrutiny. So I think it's very, very clear that there's a focus on women's health needs at the moment. So I don't think there's much more than that I can say.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Minister referred earlier to needing more money to be able to make effective change. But some of the issues identified in the strategic needs assessment were to do with, quote, dismissive and misogynistic attitudes leading to stigmatisation of women's health issues. So what is he doing to address these cultural issues within his department?
So I think that the leadership team are aware of a number of issues that need to be addressed, and they're addressing them through the management system from the top down, sir. I think racism has been another one that's in need of address, and that's being addressed too. So, yeah, like I say, I don't have an executive job in the health service. To an extent, I have to have trust in the people that are leading the organisation, and I'm comfortable, sir, that they're doing all the right things.
Sir, could I ask just a clarification on what is he doing to address these which is what the question was.
I think entirely that I think the Minister has answered that question by saying, personally, he has to have faith in those who are conducting things on an executive level, and the main management team is fully aware of these issues and being addressed through them. That's as I interpreted the Minister's answer. Is that fair, Minister?
Absolutely correct, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We come to question 4 that Deputy Alex Curtis will ask the Minister for the Environment.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether a building control application has been received for the proposed South Hill development? And if it has, will he update members on the status of the application, including whether the floor plans provided match those approved under planning application P 2022-1619?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. And I can tell him that as of last Thursday, the 17th, there has not been an application to building control in relation to any development at South Hill, and as such, I'm not able to respond to the specific question he asks.
Supplemental?
Yes, thank you, sir. The plans within P 2022-1619 had bathrooms in the one-bedroom units circa 1.24 metres wide, which is 62% of the minimum width in the standards. Will the Minister confirm that he expects when building control applications come forward for sites such as South Hill, they at least meet that minimum standard? I think he clarified this last sitting. I just would hope for a re-clarification.
So, as the Deputy will know, plans are submitted to Development Control and approved by officers, and all guidance, supplementary guidance, is exactly what it is. It's guidance, it's not binary, it's not black and white, and officers have the ability to decide on the balance of policies using subjectivity as to how they decide whether an approval or a refusal is given. But when it comes to access in bathrooms, I will certainly go back to the Building Control Department. This sounds very much like something which is a binary issue. Widths do need to be maintained for wheelchair access, things like that. It's really, really important that people can access these bathrooms. Building control, sir, as the Deputy also will know, is much more binary. It deals with health and safety issues, and it should be very clear that those are levels and regulations that need to be followed.
Deputy Coles.
Sorry, sir, I think I might have been just quick on the gun, because I think the Minister did ask at the end, but just for clarification, because it was a long answer, that the building control regulations are regulations and not guidance, and they are actually legally required?
I'm not going to say 100%, sir, but certainly building control deal with very much more black and white issues, with fire, with health and safety, with access and exit from property, and issues like that. And yes, they do have defined definitions that need to be met.
Any supplemental to that? Final supplementary, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Given no building control application has been submitted, will the Minister ensure that should a scheme be submitted that deviates from the approved plans, his department and his offices do not allow what could be significant amendments to a planning application without a revised plan application, i.e. through a minor amendment? So will he ensure that when submitted, if the plans are not what are approved, that the developer in this instance, or any developer, seeks approval for the correct plans that they wish to have built?
Sir, I can certainly guarantee to the Deputy that I will take a really good, close look at this and see how much of a deviation from the original plans there might be. It may well be that in many applications there are small adjustments which occur because of building control. It might be light, it might be fire exits, all sorts of things. But I don't want to give an absolute categorical guarantee here now, but I will certainly tell the Deputy I will have a serious look at this and revert to him.
Very much. Very well. We come to question 5 that Deputy Catherine Curtis will ask of the Chair of the States Employment Board. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise what measures are in place to ensure that hospital staff have access to legally required minimum rest breaks and uninterrupted rest periods? And will he state whether he is aware of any circumstances in which such access has been restricted?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Hospital staff working for Health and Care Jersey have their working patterns managed and recorded by a roster system. This ensures staff take their legally required breaks or rest periods, sir. On a day-to-day operational basis, it is the duty of the management teams to ensure. It is the duty of the management team, sir, to ensure that any changes to the published rosters do not cause a contravention of the rules and break in relation to breaks and rest periods, sir. The deputy asked if there are any circumstances that could impact on this, sir. And I would say that there may be occasions where we have a single-handed medic covering a night shift and holding a bleep, and this makes ensuring that breaks within shift more difficult to manage. But the operational teams will agree on how the in-shift breaks are managed to ensure the relevant breaks are taken, sir. Other than that, sir, the State's Employment Board is not aware of any situation where the legally required breaks are not being managed properly, sir. And if the deputy is aware, sir, we'd be pleased to hear about it. Thank you.
Supplemental question?
Yes, please, sir. With responsibility for the SEB, would the deputy explain what steps he has taken to verify that no staff, apart from the medic situation he mentioned, that no staff are working without legally defined breaks and uninterrupted rest periods?
And thank you, sir. As I said in my opening answer, the State's Employment Board are not aware of any situations where the breaks are not being managed or taken, sir. So as we are not aware, we are not taking any further steps at this stage because we don't believe there is a problem there, sir. And as the Health Minister said earlier, we have confidence in our management teams and staff. But I would reiterate, sir, the State's Employment Board is always open to receiving comments or observations from members of the public and States members, sir. And if there is any evidence of that, we'll certainly look into it as a matter of urgency.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Is the chair of SCB aware of whether employees are being allowed the right to request breastfeeding breaks equally across all States Department, especially in the hospital where it might be more difficult to provide these?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I understand that is a policy that's accepted throughout the public sector. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dublé.
Is the Minister 100% certain of this? And if not, could he commit to making some kind of communication to ensure that that is communicated to all departments, that that is the case?
And one can never be 100% certain, sir, but I'm confident that that policy is being adhered to, but we will certainly, we're happy to check, and I'll discuss with my colleagues on the State's Employment Board how we best do that. Thank you.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Is the chair of the SEB aware of the facilities available to hospital staff for them to take rest breaks? And is he content that those facilities are fit for purpose?
Well, sir, being absolutely honest, I'm not sure that too many facilities are that fit for purpose in our existing hospital anymore, so I can't be certain about that, sir. But I do know that staff are doing whatever they can with the facilities they have to ensure that appropriate breaks for all staff members and appropriate spaces are provided, sir. It's not ideal in the current conditions, sir, which is why we need to get on and build our new hospital where there will be much better facilities. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. In which case, can the chair of the SEB confirm that the new hospital will absolutely have fit-for-purpose facilities for staff to take rest breaks?
So the previous plans have included, and that I'm looking at the Health Minister now and the Assistant Minister who are, I'm pleased to say, are nodding, sir. Thank you.
Well, final supplement. Oh, sorry, Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. So the European Work Time Directive requires that staff are given 11 hours rest a day, so between shifts. Can he ensure us or advise us whether this is the case in Jersey? And if it is, in theory, does it happen in practice?
Thank you, sir. I'll have to, I would think so, generally speaking, sir, but I'd have to check on that and come back to the Deputy, if I may. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Tallier.
I do, sir. I understand that the WTD doesn't apply to Jersey, and I would be grateful if the Minister could look at minimum rest periods between shifts. But also, I think these questions arise because we do hear stories regularly about shifts being moved and staff doing shifts back to back, often without breaks of full of 11 hours. So would the Minister look at the exceptions to that rule, even if it does exist?
Thank you. So I'm trying to recall the employment law in relation to rest and break periods, and I'm sure that we might not adhere to that in those terms, sir, but I think if you look at the legal requirements for rest breaks over a weekly period, I think our legislation is pretty up to date on that, but I'll double check and come back to the Deputy, sir. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Coates.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chair ensure that rest breaks and rest periods are taken? And is he concerned that due to recruitment and retention issues and the recruitment freeze, that there may be staff members now doing the work that was previously done by 2 or 3 people, and that this is an unsafe and unsustainable situation?
Well, so first of all, I'll start by saying the recruitment freeze does not apply to frontline staff in the hospital, so I don't think that should have an impact. So we know that finding suitably qualified and experienced staff, especially in health, is extremely difficult currently. It's not just a problem where having search is a national and international problem, so it is important that we work hard and management work hard to ensure the conditions are good, facilities are good, and that breaks and rest periods are properly provided, sir. And I will undertake to discuss with colleagues on the State's Employment Board to make sure that is being adhered to, sir. And I reiterate, if any member or member of the public knows otherwise, sir, we'd be very pleased to hear about it. Thank you.
Very well. We come to question 6. The Deputy IE will ask of the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what actions, if any, are being undertaken to ensure all island properties are connected to mains water, and will he further advise whether any funding requests for such work have been made to the Council of Ministers? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So Jersey Water is the private company that are charged with providing mains water to households, and they are committed to reaching as many households as possible. They undertake annually a review and prioritise their capital investment to do that work, taking into account also, of course, things like water quality and customer demand. I can tell the Deputy, sir, that I personally, and I'm not aware of other ministers either, who have taken any funding requests to the Council of Ministers in the last 18 months, but I remain committed to working and continuing to have conversations with Jersey Water to enable more island properties to become connected to the mains network. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy IE.
Thank you, sir. I believe the Jersey Water Law 1972 falls within the Minister's remit. Article 7 of the law states, the owner or occupier of any premises may require the company to provide a supply of water sufficient for the domestic purposes of those premises, and the company shall within a reasonable time comply with that requirement. Some properties in St Helier have been waiting 20 years to be connected to the water supply. Does the Minister believe that that is a reasonable length of time? Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, St Helier is a parish which is well I apologise. Sir, St Helier is, as we know, our central parish, the most populated parish, and is well served with mains water supply. It does sound like 20 years is a very long time for any property in St Helier to have mains water, but I would need to have more specifics to answer that question. I do know that there's a large number of properties in Jersey that are within 50 metres of a main service, and they are still to be connected. That's going to be £36 million worth of work according to Jersey Water. But I appreciate in this case in St Helier, it does sound like this property should be have reasonable access to mains water, and I'd need to know more specifics as to where that was, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister accept that the issue here could be that Jersey Water require the customer to pay for the connection of water and that some customers cannot afford that connection? Is he prepared to look into this requirement with Jersey Water and to see to what extent that is indeed the barrier?
Yes, sir, I'm very happy to look into that.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Would the Minister consider that in some cases the requirement for the customer to pay places a prohibitive cost on the customer in that it may be tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds in some cases. Would he be able to consider having discussions about whether that cost might be shared potentially between Jersey Water customer and maybe even government in those cases where the situation would simply be uneconomic for those remote properties to gain mains water?
So I'm always open to discussions with anybody who needs to access mains water, or for that matter, a new electricity supply. I mean, I think both of them are not dissimilar in this effect. If you need an upgrade or an addition, there's a cost involved, and some people find that prohibitive. So yes, I will say to the Deputy, I'm happy to talk to both Jersey Electricity, but specifically in this case, Jersey Water, about how we might do that.
Very well. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister able to confirm that it is government policy to charge private individuals who may need to cross public land to connect to mains networks a cost borne by the individual that is paid to government? And if so, have any discussions taken place about whether government would reduce or waive altogether such fees?
So can I ask the Deputy if she was referring to government-owned land being crossed or private land?
Yeah, public land, government-owned land.
So I'm not aware of the answer to that question. I don't know the situation regarding water access across government-owned land, but I will find out the answer and get back to the Deputy.
Supplemental question, Deputy Stevenson. Very much. Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister not agree that there is a potential strong case, listening to the questions, that some form of regulation, some form of checks on whether or not Jersey Water is being proportionate and fair to customer based upon their legal requirements is required without the full extent of regulation, as we've seen with the JCRA and Jersey Telecom, that something needs to be happened. There's nobody to go to apart from the Minister for Jersey Water, and that's probably not fair for individual drainage contracts, although the members are right to do it. But something needs to be done to challenge Jersey Water, which they're not being, on the questions such as being asked by my colleague deputies, rather than doing nothing, and he's not responsible.
So in the extensive discussions I have with Jersey Water on a whole number of issues, I'm not aware that they're not doing anything. And it certainly isn't the case as far as I'm aware. I could say to the Deputy, since 2020, they've connected over 105 units, laying 3 kilometres of new mains water pipes, and at a cost of £750,000. So adding to the mains network, it has a cost, not inconsiderable cost, and as I'm sure we'll appreciate, every time we get to the next one, it's slightly more expensive than the previous, low-hanging fruit and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about that with Jersey Water, but it's not as straightforward as it might sound, so.
Supplementary question.
I'm grateful for the Minister's response, because he's quite right. Does he agree that we need that individual customers, whether that be in Vallée des Vaux or wherever, that seem obvious to be connected, simply ought not to be taking this Assembly's time up, and that somebody somewhere needs to be able, the customer needs to be able to go somewhere to see whether the response from Jersey Water is proportionate, because it doesn't clear not to, and it's not. We're not criticising Jersey Water, I'm not trying to, but just saying 105 properties is being connected, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. So I agree. Does he agree that we could work on a hybrid, a light form of regulation in helpful discussions with scrutiny?
So I'd be happy to discuss with scrutiny how we might make the situation better. We're always trying to make things better. I am aware of individual instances where it can be quite challenging, especially with private landowning surrounding properties that need to access mains, and sometimes neighbours need to work closer together where they can. It's regrettable that sometimes they're not able to do that, but the Deputy can be assured that I work with Jersey Water to do my best and their best to see what we can do in every circumstance.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. Would the Minister confirm as a general policy position that where people can afford to pay to connect themselves to a water supply where they're not already, that they should pay for it, and that it wouldn't be right for either the taxpayer or indeed existing water subscribers to see a hike in their bills simply to pay for others who may actually have the means and may see an increase in their property value go up by connection to mains water?
So the Deputy is absolutely right. If we're going to increase the number of houses on the island which have access to mains water, somebody has to bear that cost. It's not inconsiderable, and it most likely will be done through water bills. So every individual who is connected to the mains would have to contribute to that extension of the mains network. But the Deputy asks about, should people who can afford pay, and the obvious answer, of course, is yes. And at the moment, that's what happens. What I've committed to this morning is having some discussions with Jersey Water and others about how we might help those who are financially less well able to pay. But the current situation is exactly as the Deputy describes it.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Well, final supplementary, Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. Jersey water charges have increased by 6% in 2023, 10.9% in 2024, 5.7% in 2025, which leads to a turnover figure now of £21 million per year, yet only 150,000 of that has been allocated to connecting properties to mains water. What actions can the Minister take under the water law to try to increase that percentage of Jersey Water's turnover? Thank you, sir.
Sir, as I've said a number of times already this morning, I do have discussions with Jersey Water on a regular basis. Some of these issues may well be shareholder issues, in which case the Treasury Minister would be better advised. But I am aware that Jersey Water on a regular basis deal with leakage. They have fantastic leakage results, but they still want to make sure that the system does not leak water. They want to continue to provide the best treatment they can using their current treatment works, when we know there's a lot of money, tens of millions of pounds to be spent on treatment works in the next 5 or 6 years. We know PFAS is going to be an issue along with other chemicals. We've got to do that. And finally, Jersey Water are committed to identifying the new water strategy and water resources for the coming 15, 20, 30 years. They have a number of financial commitments which they have to look at on an annual basis. I believe they put what money they have available into extending the mains network, and maybe there's a discussion with them to do more, and they will have to reprioritise and do less of something else.
Very well. We come now to question 7. The Deputy Miles will ask of the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. The Minister's absent. Deputy Scott, are you briefed to answer that question?
No, sir, sorry, I don't have the delegated authority nor the information to answer the question.
Connétable St John, are you briefed to answer that question? I'm afraid the question will inevitably be deferred in that case, given the absence from the Minister on compassionate grounds. Very much. We come now to question 8. The Deputy Jehan will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide details of the scope, priorities and key objectives of the energy policy areas he is responsible for as outlined in the 2025 Cabinet Office Business Plan?
Thank you, sir. My responsibilities in relation to energy policy are focused on operational implementation, and the areas within my remit include the Energy Recovery Facility, the fuel farm as landowner, roads and highways insofar as this relates to oversight of the work by utility companies and the use of energy in government buildings. I also have some legislative powers relating to energy, for example, operational powers under the gas law. The development work on an energy strategy is in its early stages. I'd expect this work to identify specific priorities and objectives for areas within my portfolio as it progresses during this year and into 2026. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Jehan, supplemental?
Yes, sir, thank you. In answer to written question 76, 2024, around Island Energy's 12% price rise, the Minister stated that he is undertaking a review of the Jersey Gas Company law around the powers to introduce price regulation. Could the Minister advise if this review has taken place? If so, what's the conclusions? Or if not, is it part of his work for 2025? And could you explain what this would entail?
So we have been working as a ministerial oversight group, sir, which I'm a part of, and we've been focusing on other areas of the law which we felt were more important to change in a speedy manner, sir. And the Home Affairs Minister will bring those proposals to the Assembly. Thank you.
Very well, we move now to question 9 that Deputy Andrews will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Following the publication in 2018 of a scrutiny report on residential property transactions, will the Chief Minister advise what actions have been taken to date to implement the review panel's recommendations and advise what further actions, if any, he intends to take?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I remember that report, sir. But it is nearly 7 years old, and we've had 2 changes of government since then, and a pandemic, and global and local circumstances have changed dramatically, as you would expect. Priorities have been changed somewhat, and I did support back in the day some of the recommendations it made, sir. Then the then Chief Minister agreed to accept 3 of the 8 recommendations in the scrutiny report. These were largely matters for the sector itself to progress along with Law Society, and they included things like improved training and conveyancing, reconsideration of local qualifications. That's something that's being looked at the moment, and introductions of pre-sale agreements. But in terms of residential property, the current government's priorities, sir, which was set out in the Common Strategic Policy, is to focus on more affordable homes, sir, more affordable family homes for islanders, and Help to Buy schemes, sir, to get people into good housing, sir. So there is no immediate plans for us to revisit the recommendation, so although I would hope it will happen at some time in the future. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister support the introduction of pre-sale agreements? And if not, why not?
I think I would, sir, depending on the detail. It's something I called for some years ago when we were seeing a lot of what was known as gazumping, so in the markets, and buyers and sellers pulling out at the last minute, causing a great deal of inconvenience and costs, sir. So I think that's something that we do need to look at. Fortunately, with a quietening down of the housing market, it's not such a priority, sir, but something I think the government or the next government needs to look at.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. So the Chief Minister just said with the quietening down of the housing market, and so he clearly recognises the dramatic fall in a continuing amount of transactions going through the Royal Court, and therefore would he agree that now would be a good time with conveyancers, officers and all the people involved in the property transaction sector to perhaps use some of that downtime, which they're not selling properties because there's so few transactions. Now would be a good time to maybe talk with the Law Society and the team of excellent conveyancers that we have in Jersey to make some of these changes that the Deputy was asking, and it's very sad to hear that there's no progress. A pre-sale agreement and all these things are in force in the United Kingdom and other places, so it's almost a ready-made solution that can be Jersey-tailored. Would you not agree that we need to get on with this straight away?
I do agree with that, sir. Notwithstanding our current priorities as outlined in the CSP, I think the question has served as a timely reminder for us to have another look at that. So I agree with both deputies, and I think we want to do everything we can to rejuvenate the property markets outside of those circumstances beyond our control, so namely the very high interest rates, or in the context of what we've been used to. So thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Would he agree to a meeting within the next 2 weeks from his office to myself and Deputy Andrews, who both raised questions, in order to progress what he has just said? In other words, would he agree to ask his secretary to arrange an appointment so that Deputy Andrews and I can come and talk to him about progressing this?
Yes, sir, we'd be happy to organise that.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. Thank you. We on to question 10. The Deputy Jehan will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the response to oral question 246 in 2024. Will the Minister explain why the Youth Justice Strategy was not published in January 2025 as anticipated, and provide an update on when the strategy will be published?
Minister.
Sir, can I ask that the Assistant Minister who has taken on this role can be the rapporteur, please?
Are you content with that, Deputy Chair? Yes.
I don't think the Assistant Minister is in the room, sir, but also I would like the Minister to answer, because it was her answer to the oral question that's prompted this question again.
Very well, Minister. I'm afraid it's a matter for you.
No, sir, that's fine. Sir, I'm pleased to say that the Youth Justice Roadmap is now ready for publication, pending a final meeting with the Children's Commissioner later this week. We have also prepared a child-friendly version. At the end of January, partners across the system came together to review the final draft ahead of publication. Following valuable feedback, we made some minor amendments and ensured final alignment with other key areas of work. Importantly, a comprehensive children's rights impact assessment has also been completed since January. The Youth Justice Roadmap has potential to impact on children's rights. Therefore, it was essential to assess and evidence how these rights have been considered, both directly and indirectly. The CREA confirms that Youth Justice Roadmap supports a child-first, rights-respecting approach. It's been designed to minimise any negative impact on children while placing their voices and experiences at the heart of decision-making. Despite the final roadmap not yet being published, a youth justice partnership has already been formed, terms of reference agreed, and work has begun on the actions of the roadmap. Accountability and governance for this board will be through the BASC and the Ministerial Safeguarding Board.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir, and thank the Minister for that update and positive that there is movement in this space. So could I just ask what the specific factors were to cause the delay in publishing the Youth Justice Strategy when the question was asked in the oral question back at the end of 2024? The Minister was very clear that it would be published in January 2025. Why was this delay decided at the last minute?
Sir, as I stated in my previous response to this question, the reason there was a delay was that we went back and had further feedback, and concerns were raised about a number of matters. And following that feedback, we decided that we wanted to make some minor changes, and we decided to do that prior to publication. It is important, sir, that when we do this roadmap, that we are able to facilitate and deal with all matters which we are saying that we're going to do. So that's why we actually thought it was more prudent to delay rather than pushing forward, sir.
Well, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Given the previous answer, has the Minister caved to pressure from departments who put the original youth justice strategy in the too difficult tray?
Sir, I never caved to pressure from anybody, sir. So no, I have not caved to pressure in relation to this strategy or roadmap. I think it's very important, sir, that when you decide to implement a roadmap, that you are able to achieve what you are actually saying that you're going to achieve, because otherwise it's not worth implementing, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister tell us which of the Children First principles she's decided not to follow in the roadmap?
So just bear with me for 1 second. Sir, the principles that we've decided to move forward with in relation to the roadmap is, number one, the youth justice system will enable a partnership approach to support a wider systematic approach to engage children in law-abiding and positive behaviours. Children are diverted away from the formal criminal justice system at earliest point with appropriate support. Children who are engaged in serious or persistent conflict with the law will go on to achieve positive outcomes, and children, families, witnesses and community victims recover and move on beyond the impact of harm they have experienced.
So I asked the Minister the principles which she was not going to follow, and I was specifically thinking about the imprisonment of children.
Well, Minister, the question was, are there principles that you're not following? The Deputy has now further clarified, slightly unorthodox, but yes, now you know which is the principle that she is focused on.
Sir, I think the principle has to be that we will, in all possible outcomes, try and prevent young people ending up in the criminal justice system. However, what we do need to ensure is that we have full alignment to possibilities of how to defer the young people from becoming criminalised. It is important, sir, that whilst we move forward with this roadmap, that we have all possibilities of engaging with young people to keep them out of the criminal justice system. However, sir, there will be occasions where we will have to deal with young people in a positive manner. And that is what this roadmap clearly is defined to do. And we all need to work together across Justice and Home Affairs and the Children's Services in order to achieve this.
Well, a final supplementary, Deputy Jehan.
Yes, sir, thank you. And as this is new news for the Assembly, that this is a roadmap and not a strategy, even though I've continuously asked questions about the Youth Justice Strategy since the beginning of 2024, could the Minister give an explanation as to why it has turned into a roadmap and not a strategy at the last minute?
Sir, I think it was just that we decided that a roadmap was more appropriate, that we could set out all our principles and the journey in which we wish to take, as opposed to a strategy, sir.
We come to the final question that Deputy Reniff will ask the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the progress of the construction of the acute hospital at Overdale, with particular reference to the procurement process that commenced in autumn 2024?
Minister.
So, as I believe the Deputy is aware, the process to secure a mains work delivery partner started in the autumn of 2024 with the issuing of what in the construction industry is generally referred to as a prior information notice. And that's basically advertising the fact that the construction contract is available. This was followed by a second stage where a pre-qualification questionnaire was issued to interested parties, and this part of the process was concluded in January 2025. For those that qualified, the invitation to tender stage 1 process commenced in March 2025, and so it's anticipated that the full procurement process will conclude sometime in the autumn with the signing of the main works contract for the acute hospital. And I'm afraid that's probably about as much as I'm able to say on the subject at this point in time, sir, because this is an active procurement process that involves investment of resource by potential partners and commercially sensitive discussions, the release of which would undoubtedly prejudice the process, sir. So I hope that answers the Deputy's question appropriately. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for that answer. Can the Minister state, is the plan to have one large contractor, or does it look from the bids coming in as if it's going to be, the work is going to be spread between several different contractors? Thank you.
I just think I'd like to refer the Deputy to my last paragraph, sir. I genuinely don't think it's in our interest to be discussing who may be in the frame at this point in time, what size business they are, and what the combination of contractors may or may not be in the final analysis, sir. So if the Deputy doesn't mind, I think I'll leave it there, if that's okay. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. Given the scale of investment, how is the Minister planning to manage cost overruns or delays to protect public funds and ensure the project stays within budget?
So that's something that's taken care of by the team that's dealing with the issue. So that's not something that I have got a hand in. I I've said this before, I think we've got a very, very efficient team running the project, and I have every confidence in them, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Kovac.
Yes, please. So what specific measures are being taken to ensure transparency and value for money throughout the procurement and construction phases of the acute hospital at Overdale?
Well, sir, I think to date we've adopted a policy of being as transparent as we can be at every stage, and that's the overall approach that we're going to take right the way through. There are certain things that are commercially sensitive, and we have to be careful about those, so we won't be revealing anything that we consider would not be in the public interest, but certainly everything else we're prepared to make public, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his first answer. I just wondered if he could clarify if the timetable he gave just now is different to what was forecast at the beginning of procurement in August, and if so, what's changed? Thank you, sir.
I haven't made a direct comparison. I think it's broadly in line, so it may be running a little bit behind, but not to any great extent. I don't think so.
Supplement. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister confirm whether or not once the main contractor has been appointed, that they will have freedom to appoint subcontractors?
These are all discussions that are currently taking place with the contractors that have got through to the current stage. So that could be, well, as I say, I can't predict what the outcomes of those discussions will be, but that's the type of discussion that's taking place at the moment, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I'd also like to ask the Minister if he could confirm whether the range of subcontractors will be a composition of both on-island and off-island providers.
What I can say is that there are a number of areas of work where we can put the work directly to local contractors anyway, and the combination of ongoing works, once we've got a principal delivery partner, will be very dependent on the nature of the contract that we eventually put together, sir.
So could I just ask for a point of clarification on that?
No, if the matter for the Minister's answer is a matter for him. Provided he's answered and addressed the question, then there's no chance for a further supplementary.
It was just that he said we rather than they, and I asked particularly about the contractor's responsibilities, not the Minister's responsibilities.
Well, then I think if you can clarify that, that is a reasonable clarification of the question.
Forgive me for being a little bit slow, sir, but I've missed the point of that question. If the Deputy could run through that again in simple terms for me, that'd be helpful.
Time, would you like to just clarify exactly what point you are getting to?
Thank you, sir. I was asking the Minister whether or not the subcontractors would be a combination of on-island and off-island providers, and whether he could clarify that position.
So I'd hoped I'd made that plain. It could well be that it's a combination of on-island and off-island, but that will depend whether it's under the main contract or whether it's directly contracted areas where we're intending to get some of the work done on direct contracts with local contractors in any event, sir. Some of that work is already happening. So it could be a combination of both of those situations, sir.
It could be a combination, there is. So, final supplementary, Deputy Minister.
Yes, sir. Perhaps I could try my luck with a couple of points. How many companies, can the Minister state, how many companies have made it through to the final stage? When will the tender process be complete involving them, and will construction work commence in Q3 2025 as originally envisaged?
Right, there were three questions there, weren't there? Sorry, if you could just go through them again, I just want to make sure I don't get them wrong.
Certainly. How many companies have made it through to the final stage? When will that final stage of the tender process be complete, and will it lead to construction work commencing in Q3 2025 as originally envisaged?
I'm afraid I can't answer that first question. I think it would be unwise to do that. We're hoping to have the contract signed in the autumn, as I said in my initial response, and depending on the timing of that, that will define whether work starts with the principal contractor in Q3. It's very unlikely to be quarter three, so more likely to be quarter four.
Very well. That concludes questions with notice. We now come on to periods of questions to ministers without notice. The first question is the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy Jehan.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister outline the impacts of delaying key liquid waste projects due to the lack of confirmed funding, both in terms of value and source beyond 2026?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are currently working hard on our liquid waste with planning applications in for 2 attenuation tanks. We hope, sir, in the next government plan that we can get sufficient funding to catch up. But in terms of the impact, sir, we hope to make sure that we're on track for the new homes in St. Peter's and at Mofor, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy Jehan.
Thank you, sir. Surprised to hear that response because it's a little different from a letter that we received from the Minister recently of the scrutiny panel being concerned about the impacts. So could the Minister clarify what steps he is taking to secure funding for the liquid waste strategy beyond 2026 and whether he plans to bring forward a proposal on user charges during this term as previously stated?
So I'm happy to confirm that I'm working with colleagues in the Council of Ministers to secure funding, and I'm also working with officers, sir, how that may be achieved, sir. Unfortunately, it's too early to say what that looks like, but rest assured, sir, that there's lots of work taking place in this area. Thank you.
Just so members are aware, I have noted Deputy Miles, Deputy IA, the Connétable, St. Brulard, Deputy Bailiff, Deputy Moore and Deputy Howell, and now Deputy Kovac. If anyone else thought they'd been looked at.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, I now have in addition, Deputy Osif, Deputy Stevenson, Deputy Wilson and Deputy Moore. Very well. Next to Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister update us, please, on the progress of the expressions of interest for the pavilion at Le Creux?
Yes, sir. I'm delighted to say we've had more than 16 expressions of interest in what is a great facility for the island. The focus is on the community and or sport, and currently the team are evaluating those 16 which will be shortlisted with a view to interviewing a shortlist of prospective occupiers. I actually visited the site last week, sir, with one of those interested parties. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister give us an indication when there will be a likely occupation of the site?
Yes, sir. So I've tried to keep the deputies and the constable updated on Le Creux. So we're delayed because of the work that has to happen at the tunnels at St. Oban. I'm pleased to say that progress is being made there. It's our intention, sir, that we would interview people or shortlisted parties, sir, by the end of May, early June, and hopefully we'll have someone in there for the summer. Thank you.
Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. The Minister mentioned just before the proposed attenuation tank at St. Peter's Village. How long will it be now before work starts, now that the site has been purchased, and how long will it take in development? Thank you, sir.
Thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, we are waiting, sir, on the planning application to be determined, which we hope will be in early July. We hope it may go to the Planning Committee on the 19th of June or the 3rd of July. The plan then, sir, is for tenders to take place, which is, there's been a 10-week tender process, and those tenders are being evaluated by this week, actually, sir. The tenders should be evaluated, and we'd hope that we'd see that up and running by February 2027, subject to securing planning approval. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. What additional work will need to be done on the sewerage system in the St. Peter's Valley to connect everybody up to the attenuation tank? And will it serve all the new developments that are proposed to be built? Thank you, sir.
So it's the village rather than the valley, so that requires work, sir. And there's a separate project around the St. Peter Village network upgrades, which sees the size of the pipes increased by 150 millimetres, So that work is happening, sir. There were trial holes have been dug, and the upsize works completed by February. The tender work for the next piece of the work is also due to conclude this week, sir, and we expect to commence work in Q2 2025 on the network upgrades and complete that work by March 2026. Thank you, sir.
Connétable.
Thank you, sir. The La Rue de la Baie in Saint-Bernard is in the middle of one of the prime island tourist locations and is in a parlous state. Would the Minister confirm that his department are in discussions with utility companies with a view to eventual resurfacing of that road? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm delighted to remind members that you can see online our plans for resurfacing for the next 5 years. Those are available, sir, for any member of the Assembly, any member of the public to see what is planned and when it is planned for, sir. Unfortunately, I can't remember all of the roads and all of the dates, but I'm happy to get back to the Constable later this morning. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir. Would the Minister agree that much of the trenching work that has gone on in that road and others is being let go to an advanced state where the surface is unacceptable? Would he agree that his road surface inspection scheme needs review? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. There is a limited period of time, sir, when somebody reinstates the trench. If it fails that, they have to redo it, sir. I'm not aware of the details in that area, but I am pleased to say that we actually use technology, sir, when we inspect the roads, and the roads are inspected frequently. And again, I'm happy to come back to the Constable. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Moving to Fort Regent. The funding proposals that accompanied the plans appeared a little vague, and in particular, they included revenues from a proposed hotel. And I would ask the Minister, how dependent are the plans for Fort Regent on the hotel proposal? And does he have any idea of what kind of size of hotel would be required to meet that funding requirement?
Thank you, sir. Thank the Deputy for his question. Sir, the plans are not dependent on a hotel being at Fort Regent, sir. It is desirable to have a hotel to increase the revenue that we can achieve from that site, but they're not. It's not essential, sir. We have got a nursery, sir, that will derive revenue. We plan to have cinemas that will derive revenue, and a number of other initiatives which will derive revenue. And I've been very firm with the team that we have to ensure that whatever we put at Fort Regent is sustainable in the long term, sir, and therefore I'm taking a very close interest into what revenue is generated from that site. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Is the Minister able to publish a more detailed breakdown of the funding proposals for Fort Regent? Because it seems, just from a layman's point of view, that the revenue from nurseries and cinemas may not be enough to cover the costs of the development, and it would be interesting to know where the other sources are and how it breaks down.
So certainly we're not going to start any work at Fort Regent until we're in a place that we can fund the development and we can fund the maintenance of the fort. We're currently out to public consultation, sir. I'm delighted with the level of response we've had from islanders, from right across the island, right across the demographics. We will look at that feedback, sir, and that will finally decide what we put into Fort Regent. So it's a bit early to say how the funding will come in terms of revenue costs, but please rest assured, sir, we'll have to make sure that there is sufficient revenue costs. Currently, sir, we achieve around £15.50 an hour for the rotunda, sir. Clearly that is not sustainable. We need to make things work for us. Thank you.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. With regard to Fort Regent, what consideration has been given to the types of business that will be put in there and whether they will complement those businesses already in town and perhaps struggling at the moment, or whether they will in fact complement those businesses and draw more people into our town?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. So I think in terms of what type of businesses, sir, we envisage there being potential for 6 cinemas, sir. That would replace the existing cinemas that are currently on the waterfront, sir. So other businesses, we do need some hospitality there, sir. If we're going to attract people to attend events, sir, we want people to arrive early and perhaps leave later so that we don't have a big surge of people going to and from the fort at one time, sir. In terms of the detail, that detail will have to be worked out following the consultation and expressions of interest, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question. Thank you. Deputy Howe.
Thank you, sir. I've been contacted by parishioners, members of the Honorary Police, the Roads Committee and parents of the Trinity School in relation to the temporary road changes in relation to that school. It is thought by those who've contacted me that we do not currently have the optimum solution. Please can the Minister explain what process will be followed to enable an optimum solution to be arrived at? Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for her question. Sir, the Trinity road safety improvements were done on a 12-month trial, sir. We're currently reviewing feedback from people involved, sir. It's very interesting. Wherever we do road safety improvements, the people that are most affected, the people that use the road to cross, are the ones who want to see the traffic slowed down, and the people that go from A to B through an area don't want to see any changes at all. I think we can make some slight improvements to what we've put at Trinity. I look forward to working with representatives, stakeholders and the department to achieve what is best. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Howe. Deputy Ozef.
So I wonder if the Minister would confirm whether or not he intends to tender or sell any biogas from the liquid waste facility. The reason for asking is a statement by the Chief Executive of Island Energy that they were going to be turning Jersey Gas into a natural gas company, and I just wanted to put the record straight from the Minister. I didn't think he was selling the biogas that they get from their plants is for sale. Could he confirm for the avoidance of doubt that it isn't, or is it?
Sir, I'm delighted to inform members that we utilise around £1,000 worth of biogas each and every day, sir, to generate power, sir, to run the sewage treatment work, sir. We have no intention, sir, of selling that. We want to do it for ourselves, sir, and be more efficient if we can. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question.
Grateful to the Minister for his answer as expected, which wasn't planted. I wonder, would he share my surprise that in a briefing to members, which I wasn't able to attend, but I have had the slides and had the explanation to, that the Chief Executive apparently said that they were going to become a biogas company. And would he be surprised about that, and would he not be a little concerned?
So, no, I'm not surprised, sir, because clearly fuel firms have got to evolve, sir, and biogas or biofuels is one way of evolving. Sir, that won't include the energy that we currently generate at Balazan, sir, because as I've stated, we already use that energy. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. How do the proposed amendments in the draft highways law amendment regulations aim to improve the efficiency and flexibility of civil administration in Jersey?
Sorry, could you repeat the last part of your question?
How this amendment to the regulations of the draft highways law aim to improve the efficiency and flexibility of civil administration in Jersey?
So I couldn't hear you. The draft which law?
Draft highway law
Highway.
that the Minister proposed, the P31.
Sorry, I still haven't got the end of your question. I beg your pardon.
Is it going to improve civil administration in Jersey? Is what?
The efficiency and flexibility of the civil administration.
Civil administration in Jersey. Is that going to be improved by the highway law, or how is it going to do it?
So the review on the highway law is very extensive, sir, and is probably a 5-year project. We would like to see many efficiencies within that law, but I'm sorry that I can't able to answer the Deputy's question other than to say that whenever we make changes, we hope to improve efficiencies. Thank you.
Have a supplemental question, Deputy.
Can the Minister provide any example of specific administrative functions or laws related to the highways that might be amended under these proposed regulations?
So I can't this morning, sir, but I'm happy to liaise with the Deputy about more of the detail. Thank you.
There are, can you get an extremely quick question in, Deputy Stevenson? No. In which case, I think we have reached the end of questions for this Minister. We come to questions for the Minister for Housing. Deputy Aye.
Thank you, sir. In regard to the proposed housing tribunal, I noted that it said that it would require members to have legal qualifications and housing expertise. From where does the Minister expect to find those people? Does he expect to go outside of the island to fulfil those positions? Thank you, sir.
No, sir, that would be inside the island. There was an exercise by my predecessor who had intended to use an older law to establish a rent tribunal and had put a process forward for receiving applications, and applications were forthcoming in that, so I don't anticipate that being an issue when I attempt to do the same for the new rent tribunal, if that's approved by the Assembly.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister be asking members of the Jersey Landlords Association whether they would like to sit on the tribunal, obviously because they will have the relevant housing expertise? Thank you.
So I don't necessarily see a problem with members serving on it, but I would not accept those with executive roles within that association serving on it, because I would regard that as a conflict of interest.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister support the Jersey Competition Regulatory Authority investigating mortgage products in Jersey? And if not, why not?
So if they would want to do that kind of exercise, I'd be paying very close attention to it. And if there's talk of them doing such a thing, I would be interested to see what they would come up with. But I wouldn't, as Minister, instruct them one way or the other on it.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Does the Minister have any information about mortgage products in Jersey? And if not, why not?
So that's an extremely open question. Yeah, I possibly have some, but I don't know if that would go as far as what the Deputy would want, and if he wanted to be more specific on it, I'd be happy to talk to him outside the Assembly.
Protean question, Protean answer, I think, if I can use that word again. Deputy Reniff.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister considered what impact the 5% limit proposed in his residential tenancy law in terms of rental increases, that is inflation, or 5%, whichever is the lower, might have on investment in the private rental sector, given that it pretty well guarantees that rental income over the long term will trend below inflation?
So I'm not sure I agree with his assessment. At the end of that, we did look at what this would have meant historically based on previous RPI measures, and we found I double-checked exactly, but it was something like in the last 20 years there would have only been 2 occasions where that would have been the cap as opposed to the RPI cap in it. So it's very rare, and it's there very much as a safeguard. The reason, sir, I went for that mechanism is because there is evidence that it's already used as a mechanism in the rental market by some letting agents who support their clients in applying that kind of limit anyway, because they recognise the hardship it would cause for tenants in moments of high inflation. But I would also iterate, sir, that it's a cap in ordinary circumstances, which if there are extraordinary circumstances where a landlord feels they need to go above that, they will have the ability to propose doing so. And it's only if the tenant feels that it really is unjustifiable that it would be their prerogative to appeal it. So I think it's very, very light touch.
Supplemental question, Deputy Reniff.
So before I ask the supplementary, could I just point out that the question asked what impact the 5% limit would have on investment in the private rental sector, and I don't believe that was addressed.
think it's perfectly, I think it was part of the question, so if you'd like to address that, Deputy.
Sir, we considered everything in the round on it, and I believe I did answer it by saying it's my view that because it is so light touch, I don't think it would have that kind of assessment. But it's always difficult, sir, to predict the future. So, you know, those kind of impacts are very difficult to foresee.
Supplementary question.
Yes, thank you. I thank the Minister for that. Has he considered other measures that might improve confidence in the private rental sector, such as increasing allowances for house renovations and so on, which could be offset against tax and so on, as a sort of measure to boost confidence in the private rental sector?
So no, I haven't, because that wouldn't be a residential tenancy law matter itself. That would fall, I think, under some tax thing, and I'm not really sure what the issue there is. If people are investing in their properties, they are able to claim some of that against tax because it's a legitimate business expense.
Well, Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. The guidance for pets in rented dwellings appears to have gained praise from tenants and landlords. Does the Minister accept an approved code of practice for landlords and tenants will be a quick, light-touch way to improve a tenant's experience to the benefit of all stakeholders in the private rented dwelling sector? And if not, why not?
No, sir, and we can give accolades to that PETS guidance if we like, but it has only existed for a very short period of time, and as yet there is precisely no evidence of it having helped anyone, and I'm sceptical that it will do so. I don't believe that going through a long and drawn-out bureaucratic exercise to put another voluntary document together is a good use of my time that will lead to helping anyone.
Supplemental question, Deputy Wall.
Yes, sir. Does the Minister consider well-established existing guidance and approved codes of practice for many industries, including the elected representatives here today, is ineffective and not worth the paper it's written on? And if not, why not?
So that question is both ridiculous and clearly can't be aimed at me.
Well, I don't think it's a question that can possibly be directed at this minister within his ministerial portfolio, so it's the... I would not allow it. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has cited revenge evictions as one of the drivers for the changes he's proposing in the new rental properties law. Can the Minister share how many revenge evictions he believes there's been in the last 5 years which inform his views? And if he doesn't have the data to hand now, could he circulate that?
No, sir. As I have explained previously, it is axiomatic that you cannot get data on revenge evictions because they are not collected, because there is no need for them to be collected. They are delivered by a simple issuing of notice under Article 6 of the Residential Tenancy Law in retaliation for something that does not have to be marked or noted anywhere. So I get people coming to me as a constituency representative, and I know that other bodies do, like the Citizens' Advice, etc., for tenants coming to them to say that they think that they have that they're being asked to leave their home because they've caused too much of a fuss about something they actually had the right to cause a fuss about. But the fact is, there is nothing that can be done in that situation, and so it goes no further apart from the tenant simply having to lump it. And on top of that, sir, knowing that there's nothing that can be done about it will, I think, probably influence tenants' behaviour before it gets to that point and prevent them from complaining. So it's both an issue in reality for it happening, but also in theory that it could happen, affecting tenants' behaviour as a result.
Supplementary question, Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. If the proposals are approved and enacted, how then will the success of the new law be measured, particularly in relation to reducing revenge evictions in the Minister's view?
Again, sir, it will be axiomatic that it will have been effective because the law prevents it from happening. Just because you haven't got data on something that's impossible to collect data on wouldn't mean that it wouldn't be a success when you put something in place that objectively would stop it from happening.
Any other questions for this Minister? Deputy Reniff.
Yes, beg your pardon, thank you. What criteria, the Minister has defined a housing crisis since he began his time in office, correctly in my view, but what criteria does the Housing Minister use to define the housing crisis?
So very simply, I define it in something that is immeasurable and that is whether our community has hope that their future will get better because of the housing situation that they face. I speak to countless amounts of young people who feel that it's the cost of housing and the accessibility of housing that is the number one issue that leads them to not have confidence that they can have the kind of future in Jersey that they would like. I appreciate that that's not an easy thing to measure, but it's something I'm deeply hurt by when I speak to people facing that, and it's my ambition to one day be in a position where, in particular, young people don't feel that way and have confidence that they'll have decent housing available to them that they can afford, that will give them a decent standard of life in Jersey.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, so that answer made it sound suspiciously like the definition of a housing crisis is whatever the Minister decides. How will he know when the housing crisis is over? What data will he use to inform the housing crisis being over?
So I make no apologies for using a definition that is based on rhetoric, because I think that that is appropriate in this circumstance. I'm not interested in a crude scientific exercise to work out what we already know, which is that Jersey has a housing crisis and it's hurting people. I don't think it's a good use of my time to run round in circles doing scientific exercises on that, distracting me from enacting the things that will help overcome that crisis.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe the proliferation of flats and apartments within the housing stock will also cause part of the intangible housing crisis he sees with regards to desire and long-term sustainability in Jersey? So I see where the Deputy is coming from with that question, and I appreciate the point that he's making. It's absolutely right that we would want our young people to believe that they will have the kinds of homes that they will be happy in and be able to raise families, and for many of them that won't mean small one-bedroom apartments. So I agree with, I think, the point that underpins his question, and that's why it's important that we support our housing providers in building those kinds of family homes on the rezoned sites and providing the kind of products that make it easier for people who aspire to have families to get in those homes. But I don't think that the proliferation of one-bed flats itself is a harmful thing. In fact, it can be a very positive thing, because it is quite possibly one of the things that has led to falling house prices in that particular area, which does make it at least easier for you to get your first step on the ladder. And once you've made your first step, it's then easier to do your second and third to upsize. So I think as a route into home ownership, a one-bed flat can be a helpful thing for somebody eventually going on to get a three-bed home with a garden and space for their children to play, etc. So I appreciate the point he's making, but I don't think it's a cause of the crisis, although I can understand why it may make people feel that the options aren't available to them. Supplementary, sir?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. I think the Minister highlighted it is important to have the right balance in that answer. But is the Minister aware that he has a level of power within the Bridging Island Plan to help direct what housing needs should be? Page 200, the preamble to Policy H4, Meeting Housing Needs, allows a Minister for Housing to provide guidance to determine housing needs. Is he aware of that power, and does he intend to issue guidance for the future under this island plan alongside the Minister for Environment as his powers allow? Absolutely, sir. And members of my team are frequently in conversation with developers when they're in the early stages of planning what they may wish to seek approval to build, and they will help work with them to evidence the needs that there is out there for particular home sizes. That's something that we're already proactively doing, and I support my team in doing that.
Deputy Jehan.
Thank you, sir. The Minister, in his last quarterly hearing with the scrutiny panel, touched upon a new assisted home ownership product that he's in discussions with Andean. Could he give more details to the Assembly, please, on this product?
No, I can't, sir, because we're not in a position to do that, other than to say to members that I hope in the coming months we will be in a position to do that, to add another string to our bow in terms of products that we offer people to get into home ownership. But at this point, I don't feel I'm able to give more detail on that. Sorry.
Anything further?
Well, yes, I'll try. The Minister, in his last answers to Deputy Alex Curtis, said that the proliferation of one-bedroom flats and homes in Jersey help more islanders into home ownership. Does this analysis mean that this kind of product, home ownership, will go beyond first-time buyers, but to the wider home ownership beyond kind of first-time buyers, or the first step in home ownership?
So I'm not sure if that question relates to the potential new assisted purchase products that she referred to in her first question. I'm just not quite sure I understand it.
My understanding was that this was a follow-on. You've said that you can't go into detail, but the deputies asked for some further detail about it relating to...
I'm sorry, sir, I just don't understand the question. Could you
All right, then would you repeat the
it?
question, please? Supplemental question, please?
Yes, sir. It was the fact that the Minister, in his response to Deputy Alex Curtis, talked about the fact that the proliferation of one-bedroom flats in Jersey means that it's easier for first-time buyers to be able to get onto the housing market. So in that analysis that he's just made, does that mean that a new product that he will be making on home ownership be wider than a first step?
No.
I'm sorry, you're out of time. We didn't get there, but we come now to the third period of questions that the Chief Minister will answer. Questions for the Chief Minister. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. In January, the Chief Minister told the BBC that funding for Project Breakwater, or the Island Regeneration Programme, as I think it's now known, would be published in March. It's still not published now. Can he say when it will be published, and what the broad outlines of that funding include?
Thank you, sir. I don't think my comments related to the funding, but back in January we were hoping that Project Breakwater would have been evolved enough to publish in March. We're not quite at that stage, and we're anticipating a time frame, sir, that leads to full publication by the middle of May, sir. But between now and the middle of May, the route of it is to go to the Regeneration Steering Group, Council of Ministers, scrutiny, States members, and then a public announcement, sir. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Is one of the reasons for the delay related to potential shortfalls in funding, maybe as a result of Pillar 2 receipts not being as hopeful as had been originally planned?
No, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
Sir, standing in my name is an amendment to a debate on energy policy later, which I've asked the Chief Minister on the record on a number of occasions concerning the fuel farm. Could he explain to the Assembly whether or not there is a period of time until the 30th of April that the states can exercise the trigger clauses?
I think so. The answer that the states can exercise any clause it likes between now and the 30th of April, sir. And in relation to the Deputy's amendment to Deputy Jehan's proposition, which we have spoken about outside of the Assembly, sir, I would, after careful consideration and discussion at Council of Ministers, I refer him to the comments published by the Minister for Infrastructure.
The question is quite simple, sir.
I'll give way, sir.
I'm aware that we don't want to take up valuable time, sir. I just want to clarify, for the avoidance of doubt, does he have a written agreement from Rubis that extends the trigger clause that were not previously done until the 30th of April or not?
Yes, sir.
Supplemental question. That was your first question.
That is my supplementary, sir. Will he publish it, or will he show it to me?
That's been answered then.
My supplementary will he publish it, or will he show it to members, including myself?
I'd have to check, sir, around the confidentiality arrangements, commercial confidentiality arrangements, and if it's possible, sir, I don't see a problem with it, but I need to check and liaise with the Infrastructure Minister.
Connétable and Clement.
Chief Minister, are you aware that the hospitality industry in all its forms has made the worst start to the season in living memory, which has serious ramifications to all concerned, including the state's exchequer?
Well, sir, I wouldn't say it's been the worst start in living memory, so taking into account pandemics and other shocks to the economy,
since the Second World War, but I am aware it has been a difficult and challenging start, sir. We're seeing a big change to booking patterns, and although visitor numbers and numbers of people travelling through the ports is quite encouraging, I am aware, sir, that there is a broader issue to address, and I have been discussing the matter with the Economy Minister, sir, and meetings with the industry's body, sir, I hope can be arranged to discuss in further detail, sir. But yes, the government is very aware of the challenges.
So, a supplementary question.
Yes, I think the Chief Minister's answered, but I would be pleased to ask the Chief Minister whether he'd be prepared to meet urgently with the business leaders and visit Britain to forge a way forward in order to avert total disaster.
So I very much hope, sir, and believe we're not facing a total disaster, sir. But yes, the answer is we will arrange some urgent meetings, sir, and plan to do that as soon as this Assembly business is finished. Thank you.
Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Reniff.
Yes, I'm turning to Pillar 2. The budget made clear that... sorry, sir. The budget made clear that the hospital funding was dependent on £277 million, which it was anticipated would come from Pillar 2, with the backstop being borrowing from the strategic reserve if Pillar 2 receipts did not reach the required level. Does the Chief Minister think that the likelihood of having to borrow from the strategic reserves has increased as a result of recent events?
It's hard to say at this stage, sir, because whilst we expect Pillar 2 receipts relating to 2025, our views on that is that it's quite probable that there is receipts here. We just simply do not know what's happening after that. But what I can say is, and the Treasury Minister can provide more detail, and I'm sure she will at the appropriate time, sir, is there are a number of strategies being worked on to fund the hospital outside of reliance on Pillar 2 tax receipts.
Supplemental question, Deputy Reniff.
So will the Chief Minister be able to update the Assembly on, or ask relevant ministers to update the Assembly on Pillar 2 receipts, which were a key part of the revenue planning for the budget, in the budget, and in terms of the government's thinking about the likelihoods of these revenues being forthcoming or not?
Again, sir, it's too early to say. Deputy Gorse is leading the work on, and that with Deputy Miller. And the Deputy Gorse has met and had discussions in the United States. And we are in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment. I'd like to reassure members that the government is completely aware of the potential that there could be for there to be no Pillar 2 receipts into the future. But we just don't know. But we are keeping a very close watching brief. And I'm sure Deputy Gorse and Deputy Miller will keep States members informed.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister provide a brief update to the Assembly on the progress of the Digital Government Platform project, which is ongoing in 2025?
I'm not sure I can add anything to my previous answers, sir, and to the briefings that the deputies had with the team. The position is at his last briefing, sir, which I think was approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago, if I'm correct, sir. And I have no further updates, although I'm expecting a further update at the end of this week.
Supplemental, Deputy?
I think I heard that, but does the Chief Minister think there'll be an opportunity to update the Assembly? I had a briefing over a month ago now, I think, but the Assembly may wish to have updates on this. Will he endeavour to consider how he broadcasts some of the improvements that the island can expect with some of the platforms being built, beyond just that single platform? Yes, sir, there are plans, although they're not finalised as yet, to do a presentation and update to States members in the not too distant future, so I'll ensure that happens.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Chief Minister's reaction to the findings presented in the recent scrutiny report into the outline business case for the new healthcare facilities programme? And while doing so, can you also state whether or not he agrees with the Health Minister's comments that the comprehensive scrutiny process has caused unnecessary concern?
I think a public confidence in the hospital project, in this Assembly, and delivering a hospital project over the last decade or so is relatively low. And the last thing the public want to hear right now is further disagreements within this Assembly. So yes, I think it has caused unnecessary concern amongst islanders who just want us to get on with it, get it built, stop politicising amongst ourselves, stop arguing, stop changing our positions, sir. I was surprised at the report myself, sir, because whilst I don't disagree with some of the assumptions, we know from past work that putting everything in one site would perhaps be less from a financial cost. But we're not at that stage. This Assembly, through a democratic process, has pointed the Health Minister in the direction he and his team are travelling, and I fully support that. So whilst there are some aspects of that report that I can concur with, what I am fully confident of is that we're going to have a first-class hospital, a first-class health estate, and the sooner we get on to deliver it, the better. Thank you.
Much. Supplementary question.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I would agree with the Chief Minister that we all want that as an outcome, but does he agree that the scrutiny process also is there to act as a critical friend? And in light of the discussions, in light of the findings, has any discussion taken place with Council of Ministers about the need to conduct an affordability or process review in light of the findings and the current situation regarding tariffs and Pillar 2 receipts?
Treasury are looking at a number of funding strategies, and the Island Regeneration Programme, formerly Project Breakwater, founded by Deputy Benet, will address longer-term capital funding issues, which is something that has been overlooked for some time. As the Treasury Minister has stated publicly, Treasury are working on funding, different funding options and funding strategies, sir. And those are all based on circumstances we're facing now, on forecasts, on probabilities, on possibilities, on different outcomes. It's hard to see. The international landscape is changing all the time, sir, but I would just reiterate her comments recently in the public. Jersey is in a strong financial position. We have strong reserves, and we are in a good position, but we are also mindful of the challenges coming our way, sir, and we will aim to deal with them appropriately, sir, in an inclusive way with this Assembly. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. One of the points raised in the scrutiny panel's report concerned the proposed mental health village at St Saviour, and the scrutiny report said that it was not persuaded of that case. Could the Minister explain why he believes a health village at St Saviour has his full support?
Well, sir, it has my full support because it has been the will of the Assembly and the previous government, of which the member was the deputy was a member of, sir, that was the direction in which we go. Now, there could be 5, 10, 20 different ways of delivering the health estate. One is a single-site solution. This Assembly has decided to go for a multi-site solution, sir, which means our health estate will be spread across 3 or 4 sites, sir. Now, whilst our health estate now is probably spread across 20 or 30 locations, it's still going to deliver a vast improvement on what we have now, sir. I think my position was clear back in the day. When I was responsible for the project, I supported a single-site solution. I'm not sure the Deputy's position there, not that it's irrelevant. Now, sir, I support the State's position and the ministerial team position, the multi-site hospital, which includes the potential for a mental health facility at St Saviour's.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Health Minister has been very clear that the health budget is under extreme pressure. Does the Chief Minister regard it as a sensible use of government's funding to support multiple sites, which must inevitably cost more than single sites at a time when health budgets are under so much pressure?
I do, sir, because the new facilities, I think, will make the health, despite them being over a number of sites there, will make us far more productive. The introduction of new equipment, new modern facilities, sir, which are logistically far better designed than what we have, will not only provide opportunities for that, sir, but also provide most importantly, a far better service to members of the public. Health funding, sir, is an ongoing concern, as the Minister alludes to time and time again, sir, and that is a different focus and a different piece of work which we're working on together. But what I will remind members of, whilst the increase in funding for our health service is going up for a number of reasons, which I haven't got time to explain in this, sir, the cost of doing nothing, the cost of prevarication, the cost of delay will be a lot more than the cost of the plans we have in place.
Very well. We're left only with 25 seconds left, and therefore I'm not going to propose to call or invite further questions, and there is no notice of any further questions in any event. So that brings questions without notice to an end. There was to have been a statement on a matter of official responsibility, but in the absence of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, that is deferred until the next sitting, as I understand it. So we now move on to public business. And the first item of public business is the draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law lodged by the Minister for Social Security. The main respondent is the Chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. And I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law 2000, a law to amend the Employment Jersey Law 2003 and the Discrimination Jersey Law 2013. The states, subject to the sanction of His Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The amendments to the Employment and Discrimination Laws, which I am bringing to the Assembly today, arise out of the report and recommendations by the Independent Employment Forum, published in the summer of 2024. The Forum recommended changes to the awards regime in Jersey, which deals with compensation to employees for breaches of their employment rights. I have accepted each of the recommendations and seek the Assembly's approval of them. Sir, members will be aware that P78 also includes a proposal unconnected to the Forum's recommendations to introduce a requirement for written reasons for an employee's dismissal. I will turn to that element later in my speech. So I hope members will not object if I take the Assembly through each of the proposals in some detail. In some cases, the amendments are straightforward, but others are more substantial. I will deal first with the amendments to the employment law. These relate to breaches of an employee's statutory rights, such as, for example, the rights to pay slips, the minimum wage, and to written terms and conditions of employment. The level of award for a breach of statutory right has remained the same for more than 20 years. Currently, the maximum award the Employment Tribunal can make for a breach of an employee's statutory right is 4 weeks' pay. The Employment Forum recommends that be increased to a maximum of 8 weeks' pay. The range of compensation would therefore be between 0 and 8 weeks' pay. I agree with the Forum's conclusions that the increase is merited. Despite the current maximum award having been in place for 20 years now, the Tribunal still receives significant numbers of claims from employees whose most basic statutory rights have been breached. That is not acceptable. The increase in the maximum award will enable the Tribunal to exercise its discretion more flexibly in future. Sir, I turn to the proposals by the Forum in relation to compensation for financial loss and hurt and distress in discrimination claims. These are the most substantial of the Forum's recommendations. The Forum's consultation exercise demonstrated a strong and consistent view
that the current maximum award of £10,000 is, in the words of one correspondent, woefully inadequate. The current maximum has been in place for more than 10 years, and it needs to increase if Jersey is to maintain and enhance its position as a jurisdiction that treats its employees fairly. It will send a strong message that discrimination of whatever kind is wholly unacceptable in our community. As the Forum points out in its report, acts of discrimination have the potential, more than breaches of the employment law, to affect an employee's future earnings, their future prospects and their ability to work, and their mental health and physical well-being. Taken in that context, I consider that the Forum's recommendations in relation to the proposed increases for financial loss and hurt and distress are proportionate, fair, and necessary. Not being able to mark acts of discrimination in a robust way also has the potential to do harm to Jersey's reputation, both locally and internationally, making the island a less attractive place in which to live and work. It is vital that the dignity and well-being of all are recognised and valued, particularly if we want to retain the next generation in employment on the island. The Forum's proposal to increase the maximum amount of compensation for financial loss to £50,000 is designed to do two things. First, to stand as a mark of the seriousness with which our island views breaches of the discrimination law, and second, to provide a real deterrent to bad employment practices wherever they exist. Sir, I move to my own proposal to introduce the right of an employee to receive written reasons for their dismissal. This is a right that exists in many jurisdictions around the world, and Jersey should be no different. I have been persuaded that the introduction of such a right will help employees who are dismissed. This is especially important when it comes to potential tribunal claims for unfair dismissal and also to claims by an employee for social security benefits. When the lack of clear reasons can be a barrier to establishing an entitlement to benefits without a sanction. The failure of an employer to provide written reasons within the time limit without reasonable excuse will enable an employee to seek a remedy from the tribunal. Sir, the Assembly will be aware from the Forum's report and my response that there are additional recommendations that are not included within these primary law changes. They include several recommendations in relation to the procedures of the Employment Tribunal. I had indicated that those recommendations would be progressed in 2025, and I am pleased to confirm that work has now begun and is progressing well. I am also pleased to report that in respect of one aspect of the Tribunal's procedural rules, work is further advanced. I will shortly sign a ministerial order which will give the Tribunal the power to award costs against a person whose behaviour in respect of a claim is unreasonable or vexatious. The ministerial order will also enable the Tribunal to deal with cases where the conduct of a respondent employer falls short of that to be expected when defending a claim. Sir, taken together, I believe that these proposed amendments represent a fair balance between the rights of employees and the responsibilities of employers to ensure that they comply with the law. My report draws attention to the advice and assistance available to both employers and employees to help them navigate the employment and discrimination law landscape, and I have committed to considering and helping to improve the way in which businesses and employees can access the necessary information and advice. But ensuring employers and employees understand their rights and responsibilities cannot just be the job of government. It requires a community effort on the part of business, employee and employer organisations as centres of advice and assistance themselves if we are to maintain and enhance good employment relations. Thank you, sir. I maintain the principles.
Are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? If no member wishes to speak, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to thank the Minister for bringing this proposition today, and the Minister reflected on a report that the Employment Forum published, I think it was summer last year, and this came before the panel at the time, and we read it with great interest because we had been, I think, questioning the Minister and wondering as a panel whether this was an area that would be looked at. And the panel consensus was that the recommendations of the Employment Forum, that we agreed with what was being recommended. That was the panel consensus at that time, and members will note that we published a comments paper in relation to that. Members may also have noted that we have published a second comments paper which has focused on any further work from the Minister. In terms of the Employment Forum, really, I wanted to remind members of, I think, the confidence that we should display in the Employment Forum. I have not seen any reason personally to not have confidence in the work of that forum. And indeed, as an assembly, we have relied on their expertise and on the processes to inform the work of the assembly for many years. I'm not sure exactly when that employment forum was established, but it's definitely more than a decade old, I think. Yeah, I can see Deputy Southern nodding. I know he has great knowledge of that forum. And in terms of the principles, sir, the one point that I did want to make was that I wanted to reflect back on the Employment Forum and the fact that as a whole, these principles have come from that body, which as an assembly we task with pieces of work. And I believe as an assembly we should be demonstrating that we have confidence in that body, and we should be supporting the principles today.
Right, deputies, any other member wish to speak on the principles? If no other member, Deputy Reniff.
Yeah. Just to say a few words, I support the Minister's proposals, but I do think one aspect that we could think about and reflect on in terms of these principles is the impact they have on people's attitude to work. And we have a society where we know that people are finding work harder, that we have higher rates of inactivity in the labour market and so on, because people feel stress and difficulties in work. And I think these principles adopting these principles shows society where we stand as a society on these matters. It shows us that we take seriously the concerns of employees. We balance them against employers needing to have the ability to operate businesses. But I think what strikes me, looking at these through the work on the scrutiny panel, was that the Employers Forum did consider these proposals very carefully, certainly as scrutiny we did, and that it is good to see that Jersey is attempting to update its standards in such a way that people entering work, people employing people in work will understand what the standards are that are expected, and that there are sanctions, appropriate sanctions in place when those standards are breached. And the level of those sanctions suggests to people the seriousness with which society takes those issues. So I support the principles, and I commend the Minister for bringing them to the Assembly.
Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? Deputy Balash.
So I may have misheard or misunderstood the Minister in her remarks about a proposal to make a ministerial order. And if I have, I hope she will forgive me. But I have considerable reservations about the Employment and Discrimination Tribunal being given any power to award costs. It's one of the it can be a tremendous disincentive to an employee to bring an action before the tribunal if the employee considers that he or she may be at risk of an order for costs. And if the Minister is proposing to do this, I would request that she shares a copy of the draft order with me, if that's possible, before the order is actually made. I'd be grateful for that.
Does any other member wish to speak upon the principles? If Deputy Tanier.
So I think it is important that we speak on the principles here, because we will be debating an amendment shortly which talks about a technical issue which I think is of great importance, and one which will be, I suspect, also quite contentious. But if we don't have the principles that we're debating first correct, then we lose sight of what the overall goal is here, of what we're trying to protect and what we're trying to stop from happening as a general practice. So, of course, though the Minister did refer to it, I think it's really important that we go back to the point that Jersey does have a discrimination law, the Discrimination Jersey Law 2013, which was sometime after the Equalities Act that was brought in the UK, and other countries obviously have their own similar legislation. And it's fundamentally to make sure that people are treated fairly in the workplace. And it's important to remind ourselves that unfair treatment in the workplace, of course, does have real-world consequences, both psychologically and sometimes physical, and it can impact on, of course, people's earnings. There can be loss of earnings, and there can be other costs that need to be recuperated as a result of that. And it could be that any of the discrimination could take place because of race discrimination, sex, gender discrimination. That last point, I think, is particularly important in the current climate, where we're seeing a commitment from this government, which is building on a previous government's commitment to violence against women and girls, but also more generally to making sure that women in our society are treated equally, something which is still an aspiration which hasn't happened yet. And of course, something which I think that increasingly, or rather maybe not increasingly, but which I think is not getting the coverage that it should be, the great forgotten discrimination that often takes place in terms of age in our community. And I think age discrimination is very real. I think it's subtle. I think it's something that we accept perhaps unwittingly, that we wouldn't necessarily accept in other areas. And I'd be very interested to know, in fact, about how that might manifest itself in the workplace in particularly. And of course, the last but not least is about disability in the workplace. And this is all about what kind of society we want to be, what kind of community we want to be in Jersey. Do we want to be inclusive? Do we just want to have things on the statute book that make us look good? Or do we want to make sure that actually there's a whole package of laws, policies and protections that are in place that are constantly being monitored and updated? And so that when we have a forum that is in place to make recommendations to the Minister, who of course also has her own views, she has a department who are also considering this all the time, do we listen to them, or do we actually substitute what we think is actually what should be put in place? So I don't want to stray too much into the amendment, because we will be debating that, so I won't talk to the amendment now. I'll reserve perhaps the ability to do that. But I want us to have that in the forefront of our minds, that this is about people being treated equally, and it's also about the fact that if you don't do anything wrong as an employer, you shouldn't have anything to fear. This is about making sure that there are rights and responsibilities on both parties, and about sending out a strong message from this Assembly today that if there are things that not simply go wrong, but if you're treated unfairly as an employee because you're disabled, because you're a woman, because you're of a certain sexuality, because you're of a certain age, or because you're of a certain ethnicity, we will not tolerate that, and we will make sure that there is at least proportionate amount of compensation that you can get for that suffering, for that loss, if you are treated in such a way. I say in closing, sir, that there will also be lots of people who don't take cases in the first place, because these they simply never find their way to it. It becomes traumatic to get there. And so we've got to be mindful of that. This is never going to be a silver bullet, sir, but this is about setting out the right principles from the very beginning So I hope that we don't just simply vote for the principles in the first reading, but actually the whole ethos of what this law is about in the first place runs through any of the debates that we end up having today, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Is there any other member with Deputy Miles?
Thank you, sir. It's just a question of procedure, please. The usher has distributed a sheet of paper to us all. I would be grateful if somebody could explain what it actually is.
Well, I don't know where it comes from. I probably should know where it comes from, but I don't. So one moment. Yes, I do have a copy, actually. The greffier advises me, and I'm afraid I didn't see it myself, that the Minister circulated an email to all members enclosing it saying a hard copy of this will be provided. It's from the Minister, and therefore I'm sure the Minister can speak to it when the Minister sums up at the end of the principles debate.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for that clarification.
Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? If no other member wishes to speak on the principles, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I agree wholeheartedly with the words of Deputy Tadier when he said that this is around the type of community that we want to be. And I thank the members of the scrutiny panel who spoke. I know that they work and have worked very diligently looking at the proposals, and I work very well with them, and I also will of course be taking on board any recommendations that they make and advice that they have. And of course, Deputy Balash, I am more than happy to share the words of the ministerial order with you before I sign that. And just for members' information, that ministerial order is something that it was both a recommendation of the Employment Forum, but something that employer organisations such as the Chamber of Commerce have been asking me to act on as well. So I was responding to employer concerns in that respect. In relation to the paper that has just been circulated that Deputy Miles just mentioned, I had emailed all members and wanted this paper circulated just to reassure some members, because I think some members were concerned that maximum awards would always be applied. So the paper contains a copy of the relevant order by which the tribunal needs to make its judgments in consideration of, and it also contains a copy of the tribunal guidelines that the tribunal considers when it is making awards against claims. So I thought that would be helpful to members who were concerned about the potential effect of raising the awards, and just give some further clarification that I think may well be useful when we debate the amendment. So I do maintain the principles and I call for the appel.
The appel is called for. I invite any members not in the Assembly to return to their seats, and I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to vote upon the principles. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted. 39 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions. Very well. Does the scrutiny panel wish to call the matter in? Deputy Dublé?
No, thank you, sir.
We now come then to a second reading. There are two amendments. One have been lodged by Deputy Ferry to Article 8, one by Deputy Balash also to Article 8. Minister, are you accepting either or both of those amendments?
Sir, I am not accepting Deputy Ferry's amendment.
Right.
I am accepting Deputy Balash's amendment.
Very well. Well, then we'll deal with Deputy Ferry's amendment when we come to Article 8. which is to which that amendment is addressed. The members agree, however, that we can take the articles as amended by Deputy Balash's amendment. Very well. Well, then in which case we simply will deal with Deputy Ferry's amendment when we come to Article 8. Do you wish to propose articles, therefore, 1 to 7 as amended, Minister?
Yes, sir.
Well, are 1 to 7 seconded? Yes, sir. Does any member wish to speak on Articles 1 to 7? Deputy Tadier.
So I should have this to hand, but I don't. Could I just ask the Minister to clarify, at what point is the amendment that Deputy Balash referred to earlier, which would impose costs on?
They were, both of the amendments were both to Article 8. The Minister has accepted Deputy Balash's amendment, but not accepted Deputy Ferry's. Very well. Articles 1 to 7 are seconded. Does any member wish to speak on any of Articles 1 to 7? Deputy Luce.
So does the Minister not have to speak to the articles before we ask questions?
No, the Minister is entitled to simply propose, and it's become the custom in the Assembly over quite some time now. If they wish to stand up and say, I propose them en bloc, they can speak to them, but sometimes they propose them en bloc and simply take questions on them.
I'm grateful, sir.
Very well. Does any member wish to speak on any of Articles 1 to 7? No member wishes to speak? And I close any debate. You call for the appel, Minister? No? Those in favour of adopting the Articles 1 to 7 kindly show.
And the appel, please, sir.
The appel is called for. I invite members to return to their seats. And I ask the greffier to open the voting. The vote is on 1 to 7. If members have had the opportunity of casting their vote, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The Articles 1 to 7 have been adopted. 38 votes for, no votes contre, no abstentions. We now come to Deputy, you propose Article 8, Minister?
Yes, sir.
Is it seconded? Yes. Very well, there's an amendment lodged by Deputy Ferry, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
In paragraph 2, in inserted paragraphs 1AA and 1B, for the greater of £50,000, substitute the lesser of £30,000.
Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And before I start, sir, is this an opportune moment to ask for declarations of interest? I make my own declaration, sir. I'm on the board of a charity. And do you think, I don't believe, sir, but it's your ruling whether or not this would affect any member's ability to vote. But I regard this, for the sake of good order and transparency, that it might be a good moment to allow people to declare whether they're an employer or they are on the board of a charity, sir.
Moment, this is Article 8.
So can I ask why it's relevant? I don't see why. We pass laws all the time that any of us can break, potentially. This isn't about... I'm not sure why it's relevant to have a declaration of who might be an employer.
My own view is that it is clearly, to the extent anyone are employers throughout the within the Assembly, then that's a role that they share with a large number of other individuals, and I don't think that that of itself is a matter that needs to be declared. The only possible difficulty is, of course, is whether there is an interest in the amount of compensation that can or cannot be ordered, and it seems to me that cannot be in any analysis a direct financial consequence. It's far too contingent upon various other things. In my view, it's not necessary to make the declaration.
So could I also ask, this is about bad employers, it's not about employers per se, so in the same way that we wouldn't declare an interest as citizens about a general law that we might break, is that
Is that relevant?
I'm not sure it's about bad employees. It's about employers who are subject to claims. They may or may not be bad employers, but that's not necessarily a presumption, I don't think, as a result of that. But I don't think there is anything that needs to be declared in connection with this, Deputy. Very well. Yes, Deputy Ferry.
Thank you for that clarity, sir. So, firstly, sir, to clarify, this amendment is in no way connected to my role as Vice Chair of the State's Employment Board. I've taken advice and there are no conflicts of interest in my bringing this amendment. But as an additional safeguard, I contacted all the members of the State's Employment Board to ask if there were any objections in me bringing this amendment, and there were none. I want to explain the reasons for bringing this amendment. I have a decade of real-world experience to draw upon when I served as Deputy Chair of the Employment Forum. And in my role as CEO of Citizens Advice Jersey, I spent a similar amount of time in the delivery of advice on the discrimination law and assisting both employers and employees with preparation for employment tribunals. So I do have experience of both to diminish the progress of enhancing employee rights and protection, and I hope that no member seeks to characterise it as such. I'm a strong advocate for employee rights, and communicating how employers can make reasonable adjustments in the workplace has been a large part of my work. I've also worked within a charity that supports people with disabilities, and I still maintain involvement as a board member on a charity that supports people with mental health problems. This amendment is in no way designed to undermine the great work of the Employment Forum, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider refining what they have recommended. The first argument for making the increase in compensation towards £30,000 and not £50,000 is that it's important to remember that the maximum sums in claims relate to per alleged breach of the law. So 3 breaches, an employer could end up facing a sum of £150,000 claim against them. And then when you add on potential legal costs, this could easily top £200,000. Under the original proposition, if an individual's yearly income is above £50,000, then the claim could be awarded in line with yearly earnings. So my amendment also seeks to cap that sum to £30,000. Sir, the discrimination law was designed to ensure that employers treat their employees fairly and do not discriminate them on any of the protected characteristics. It was not designed to put undue financial pressure on businesses and charities. This amendment seeks to find the appropriate balance between those two competing demands. In addition, unfair dismissal claims for discrimination are a day one right, so there is no 1-year qualifying period before a claim can be brought. This means that as drafted, an employee could make a compensation claim of £50,000 or 52 weeks' pay, whichever is the higher, no matter their length of service. I seek to limit that sum to £30,000 or 52 weeks' pay, whichever is the lesser. Parts of our discrimination law are built on a social model and not a medical model, as in the case in the UK. Therefore, claims of discrimination are far more nuanced in Jersey than would be the case in the United Kingdom, making it more difficult for Jersey employers to always get it right, and direct comparisons to the UK having no upper limit on discrimination claims cannot be correctly drawn. An inflation-linked rise over the period 2013, when the law was drafted, to 2024, would see an increase in the maximum sum taken from £10,000 to approximately £15,000. That would represent a 50.6% increase. £50,000 is, in my view, excessive. It is a 400% increase. £30,000 is a far more realistic figure which aligns with the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court. I therefore cannot see any justification for a 400% increase in the maximum claim from £10,000 to £50,000 at a time when businesses and charities are facing many other rising costs which could ultimately affect their economic well-being. A £50,000 maximum award could be a barrier to employment, as employers who are considering taking on staff from across our community or wanting to employ people with disabilities may be deferred from doing so, as the cost of getting it wrong could be financially catastrophic to the business or charity. Far better then to have an increase which is aligned to the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court as a solid benchmark. The Employment Forum's own extracts from the consultation bear this out, and I quote one such example now. A respondent pointed out that the current limit before the tribunal was put in place to reflect the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court, and that the precise exercise could be used as an opportunity to increase the maximum award in line with the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court, which stands at £30,000. End of quote. I also quote the comments paper from the Health and Social Security panel when referring to the maximum award for hurt and distress, who noted, the panel also welcomed the alignment of this award to reflect the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court, end quote. The increase in claims for hurt and distress is due to rise from £5,000 to £50,000, and I've not sought to limit that increase because I believe that is the right answer, sir. I therefore cannot see sufficient evidence for a 400% increase in the maximum claim from £10,000 to £50,000 at a time when businesses and particular charities are struggling financially. We have come such a long way since the discrimination law was introduced in 2013, and rather than just using a bigger stick, we need to create more opportunities and continue to educate employers. Sir, I make the amendment.
Can I seek a point of clarification from the Speaker?
Well, let's see if the amendment is seconded first, otherwise there's nowhere to go. Then I'll allow a point of clarification after. It's seconded, yes. You say a point of clarification. Of course, you can raise a point in the speech and the member will respond to it when he sums up at the end. That would normally be the way of dealing with that, unless it's a matter of urgent clarification you need before you can speak.
Well, sir, it's more because the Speaker uses a term which I don't think is correct. So
Well, in which case I think that's probably not clarification as such. That's simply that you may have to correct that when you make your interjection later on, Deputy. I think we must proceed on that basis. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, I will start with addressing what I believe is a slight error on the proposer's behalf. He mentions in his report, and he had mentioned it in his speech, that this is a sum per alleged breach of the law. Of course, it's not an alleged breach of the law at all, sir. It is actually at the point once the law has been found to have been breached. So, therefore, it's not per alleged breach, but actually found breach of the law. So it's an interesting dilemma. Obviously, we are seeing the maximum penalty being raised by the Minister, which is nothing but a good thing, because it reminds me of a time in my youth, even as an 18-year-old, and when I first sort of became aware that there is discrimination within the workplace. I remember a family friend of my mother's. She was let go for having some health issues and health complaints. And I remember saying at the time, well, surely this is discrimination, surely she should be able to... It was on before. Thank you. Yeah, so she was let go because of some health complaints, and I remember asking at the time, I was like, surely this is discrimination, surely this is allowed, surely she should be able to take this to tribunal. I was quite staggered actually at the time for the response that I was given to that. She's like, well, she could take it to tribunal, but then she'd get a reputation as someone who complains. So actually, how many women didn't go to tribunal? How many employees who were discriminated against didn't go to tribunal because the rate was so low that the risk of being labelled as an employee that complains wasn't worth doing? Well, actually, with a higher amount rather than a restricted amount, the risk can balance out. So people can then start to understand, actually, there might be bad employers, there might be employers that make mistakes, but fundamentally, people should have the right to voice that complaint without having to worry that they will be worse off because of it, and maybe facing a risk that they won't be employable because they become labelled as someone who complains. The member is concerned, so the deputy is concerned about raising the maximum rate to 52 weeks pay or £50,000, whichever is the higher. But we have to remember that the tribunal doesn't always issue the maximum fine available. In fact, actually, I had a friend recently who went through the tribunal system because it wasn't discrimination, it was just bad employment practices. Her employer was found guilty of all 3 offences that they brought to tribunal. So in theory, under the current scheme, that would have given them the right to a potential maximum compensation of £30,000. However, the tribunal awarded, based on the salary, the income of the business, a total award of only £2,500, because the tribunal reflects the company's ability to pay against what actually the loss of earnings are. So that brings me on to a point, sir, that we are a jurisdiction that is known to have a very high cost of living, but also a very high professional standards within our financial service industry. Now, if we want to attract top-level, high-quality, skilled staff to the island, we have to make sure that these people are going to know that they are protected should they face any form of discrimination within their workplace. We see training and skills from people across the world improving all the time. We have some great people. In fact, I did an AI training skill with the CPA in London, and I was surprised actually that the high level of skill that is coming out of some places that we in this field that I personally didn't realise that actually the education systems in these areas had gotten so good that they're producing some really brilliant people. Now, if we want to attract brilliant people to our island, we have to make sure that these people will not be discriminated against. And actually, by increasing this level to £50,000 or 52 weeks pay, whichever is the higher, offers them that protection. It offers them a reason when they actually look at other jurisdictions and say, well, why should I work there? What am I offered? Where are my protections? This is one of them. And actually, by reducing that figure, sir, I believe we're reducing the attractiveness of our island to actually attract the best people to come and work here. So, sir, I personally, if this was my proposition, and I'm sure the Minister would agree that if this was in her own personal political capacity, that this figure would be a lot higher. However, we are fully aware that the Minister is compromising with this £50,000 figure, but a £30,000 figure, sir, that is not a compromise, as capitulation, in my opinion, sir. So, sir, that is as far as I'll leave my comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Barbara Ward.
Thank you, sir. It's always helpful that as time passes, we look at our laws and regulations to ensure that they're fit for purpose, meet our needs and are in balance in today's world. As a past experienced member of the Employment Forum, I'm aware of the hard work that's involved, and therefore, on a personal note, can I extend my thanks to them for their report and recommendations. In the main, sir, I would support the generality uplift of awards, but sadly cannot support the proposed awards up to a maximum of £50,000 for each breach of discrimination. I feel after reading the report, I feel there's more evidence to support an uplift of up to £30,000 rather than the proposed £50,000. I feel this size of the award is just far too high. It would create an imbalance and potential impact, especially on the smaller businesses and charities on our island. If this amendment is rejected and the main proposition set out by the Minister is agreed. In my view, sir, the Petty Debts Court, as it's been alluded to, sets the bar of up to £30,000, which we need to be cognizant of. Adoption of the petty debts approach brings about more balance and a more in-keeping, equitable position at this time. I won't repeat Deputy Ferry's words as set out, sir, other than to state that I fully support Deputy Ferry's amendment to this proposition and would urge other members to do so. Thank you, sir, and members for listening.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. About this amendment, I was genuinely surprised to see that a deputy and vice chair of the SEB would bring an amendment to this proposition that goes against the recommendations of the Employment Forum. We are fortunate to have the Employment Forum, this group of employers, employees, and independent members who act as a consultative body for the government. Their recommendations are clearly set out in the Employment Forum report and are backed by evidence. And I quote from the report: "The report represents the unanimous view of the Forum following prolonged consideration and discussion. Employing people comes with responsibility. I've employed numerous people in my previous life, and I cannot see why any employer could not develop and maintain good policies to enable a good workplace culture. Employers will only face the maximum penalties as set out in the draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law if they are found by the tribunal to be guilty of discrimination. I ask deputies to bear in mind that there have only been a very small number of cases successfully brought during the last few years. Disabled people may face barriers in employment. The Jersey Discrimination Law includes disability as a protected characteristic, and it's essential that disabled people have the opportunity to carry out their work without being discriminated against. The draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law also covers other areas of discrimination apart from discrimination against disabled people. For instance, discrimination against sex, race, and age. I note that one of the priorities in the Common Strategic Policy is to implement the recommendations from the Violence Against Women and Girls Task Force report. Therefore, I'm sure that the entire Council of Ministers will support the recommendations of the Employment Forum and this draft law in order to provide further protection for women from sexual harassment in the workplace. The increase in potential penalties are in line with the Borg report recommendations. We've also received confirmation from the Jersey Community Relations Trust, Liberate, and Enable that they support the draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law. I ask States members to consider what message the amendment to this law to lower the recommended penalties regarding discrimination would send to the Jersey public and to the outside world. Jersey already lags behind many other jurisdictions in regard to the compensation available to people discriminated against in the workplace. I therefore will vote against the amendment while supporting the draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir, and I'm certainly not going to repeat what the proposer of this amendment has said, but I just want to inform the Assembly that I absolutely agree with him, and it's my intention to vote in favour of this amendment.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. And in my previous speech, I mentioned two sets of comments. The first, which was published by the panel when the Minister first lodged her amendment. And the panel considered the fact that there had been some amendments lodged, and we were advised that it was not common for scrutiny panels to directly scrutinise backbencher propositions or amendments. So what we did in this case, because we felt that members did want some further scrutiny work, what we did was we analysed further the Minister's reasons for not accepting one of the amendments, the one which is in question at the moment. And our comments, I will just summarise some of the things that are outlined in those comments. And I wanted to note for clarity that Deputy Balash dissented from those comments, and I understand his reasons for doing so. The amendment that the Minister generally is bringing aims to strengthen the compensation awards regime, and I think it's important to reflect on some of the key drivers for reform, and one of those drivers being that very few claims actually reach a full hearing, and the assumption underlying that being that the compensation cap is too low. That it hasn't reflected inflation, wage growth, and also that it doesn't reflect the real impact of discrimination. The conclusion ultimately that the majority of the panel came to, sir, was that we support the amendment generally as proposed by the Minister. And we feel that it represents a good balance. And I think previous speakers have reflected on once again on the Jersey Employment Forum and how they have conducted a thorough consultation. That consultation also, they made comparative analyses with different jurisdictions, including the UK, Guernsey, Isle of Man and Ireland. And again, previous speakers have reflected on the strong support from key stakeholders. And I think it's really important that members have a look at that letter, which I think we received this morning. If members haven't seen that letter, please look at it, because those organisations who work with individuals that may be being affected by discrimination, it's important that their voices are considered as part of this debate. And so the panel confirms that the Minister's process was a comprehensive and, that the Employment Forum process was a comprehensive and transparent one. I would like to reflect on Jersey's high cost of living, and certainly, sir, members will be aware that the cost of living in Jersey exceeds the UK by up to 38%. And this, the proposed framework proposed by the Minister, would ensure that the compensation cap is proportionate to local economic realities, and would provide some meaningful redress for those affected by discrimination. If this were to be amended by the current amendment under discussion, sir, the panel feels it would not meet those aims. We have made some recommendations which is slightly unusual in scrutiny comments, but I think is being done more so in recent years. And the Minister reflected on these earlier. The key thing that we found was that there needs to be greater clarity around what support services are available for employers. And I know members have been particularly concerned around perhaps smaller charities and charities being employers. And we have found that there needs to be some greater clarity and visibility of support services available, particularly to some of those smaller organisations. And we recommend that government formalises its partnerships with advisory services. And that's mainly Jack's and Citizens Advice. And I wanted to take a moment actually to mention both of those organisations who do a fantastic job, sometimes under really difficult circumstances, because the cases that people will often bring to them whereby people are being discriminated against, alleged discrimination may be taking place, can be deeply affecting, I think, to the people who are hearing those stories. And much of this work is largely unseen. Much of it is advisory and largely unseen. And certainly those organisations advise businesses and employers, charities, and they also advise employees. And they do a great job there. But we would like to see improved accessibility of legal guidance and tribunal information. We found that some of the information was not easy to understand and was not easy to find. And these are things that we would like the Minister to address with those organisations and to enhance the training and the educational resources, whether it's through those organisations or through other means. Perhaps it would be directly from government. That I think that's for the Minister to decide, but we will be following up on those recommendations in the usual way. And I I hope the Minister is looking favourably on those. So we will look at the 2025 review of the tribunal rules as well, and we're also going to follow up on any concerns around vexatious claims and risks to employers. But to sum up, in terms of the panel view, we endorse the Minister's rationale for not accepting this amendment, and we support her main amendment in full. And we think that the proposals as a whole are a positive step towards fairness and workplace inclusivity. That's my panel hat off now, sir, because I would like to talk more generally about discrimination. And much of the conversation, I think previous speakers have mentioned, has been for some reason around disability. But my personal experience as a States member, and we all get these phone calls, don't we, where we get somebody calling us in a moment of crisis where they are having a horrible time for one reason or another, and they want to know what to do. And I have lost count of the number of times I have had calls from women mostly, often pregnant or with a newborn, who have been also fathers of a newborn. It was at least 2 or 3 cases that I have supported, who have been subjected to some horrendous treatment in the workplace. And I think there's a whole other piece of education to be done around why that happens, in terms of what happens in the human brain, in terms of stereotypes and unconscious bias, which, by the way, we all have. And we all have a duty to analyse our own unconscious bias. It's a universal human function of our brains. And there are situations whereby sometimes it is not... it is unknowingly, and it's because of unconscious bias, but sometimes the discrimination is overt and clearly harmful, and that is still taking place. It's taking place in workplaces across the island. I can see lots of nodding. I can see nodding from women members of the Assembly who I'm assuming possibly receive these phone calls, as I do. And some of the stories, I cannot share all of them because, first of all, I would be here all day. And I may share some quotes in a minute, but what I wanted to reflect on was the number of cases that actually get to a tribunal. It has to get really, really, really bad for anybody to consider taking any of those steps. And I'm telling members today, sir, that the vast majority of cases, nothing is done. And it takes a huge amount of harm to be caused to even get to a tribunal. So the cases, in question today, we're talking about the cap, aren't we, on the compensation that can be offered. And I think we really need to come at this debate with that understanding of, if a tribunal is going to be awarding compensation, it is going to be in only those very extreme cases. I tried looking into this. I don't know if anybody else knows. Perhaps the Attorney General might know actually how many cases have made it to the tribunal, and the Minister might know. When I looked, I think it was in 2018, and bearing in mind this law has been in place since 2013, the first pregnancy or maternity discrimination case to ever actually win at a tribunal was in 2018. And I'm not sure I've seen many more since then. That's one case that I'm aware of, out of the probably, definitely tens, possibly hundreds of cases that I personally am aware of, and other members will be aware of cases I'm not aware of. And then there will, of course, be the women who don't know that they can call a States member, who have just suffered awful comments and suffered through being made redundant whilst pregnant, or being made redundant. I think many of us had an email recently. These are not just old cases. We have new cases coming to us at the moment. I will read out a quote And this is from a woman who, her experience was in finance. I would say I experienced years of direct sexual harassment in the workplace. I didn't know what to do other than just laugh along because I wasn't confident enough to challenge it. And nobody said anything when they heard it because it came from a senior leader. It was workplace banter. And I think this is something that is almost, as the Vaughan report stated, I can't remember the exact words, but it's the fabric of our society. And the reason why we have this law in the first place, that the tribunal sits within, the reason why we have this law is because there are islanders who are experiencing this discrimination. It's happening. And I wanted to reflect on the list of protected characteristics that is in the law. Sorry, sir. And the list, so we started with race, then we went on to sex, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, pregnancy and maternity, age and disability. Now, some of us will have varying levels of empathy with these experiences of people who have these characteristics because we might have some of these characteristics ourselves. I mean, everyone has a gender, don't they? All of us are going to get old, hopefully, eventually. Some of us have several of these characteristics and will know in a very deep way what it is to be discriminated against because of these characteristics, because of one or more of them. But the reason why those characteristics are protected in the law, it's that word protected that I would like members to reflect on. Because there is so much potential harm that can be done to people with these characteristics, we made a whole law to protect them. And if that process of going to a tribunal is not sufficient based on, again, the scrutiny side of things, the cost of living, and the actual, if you look at the stress and the exposure that it takes people to go through a tribunal process, that law is essentially useless if the tribunal doesn't actually have robust mechanisms for compensating people who have been harmed to such an extreme point that they feel they want to go through that stress of going to a tribunal. And it is hugely stressful. So I hope that, first of all, from a scrutiny point of view, that the Minister will take on board some of those recommendations which would help people to access that information. When somebody has been discriminated against and they're trying to decide whether to go through those processes, they do need that information available to them. And on the other hand, employers, whether it's a large business or a small charity, they need to also have access to that information and support so that they can make sure that they are not discriminating, because I don't think anybody ever, hopefully, intends to discriminate, do they? These employers, I don't think anyone is intending to do this. So the support, the education, the information, it needs to be there. And I'll finish there, sir, but personally, I really implore members to think very, very deeply about the difference between a 30,000 compensatory award and a 50,000 compensatory award will result, I think, in...
Deputy Feltham.
Thank you, sir. I'm really pleased to be following my scrutiny chair. I hope she knows how much I value the scrutiny process. And of course, I will be looking at the recommendations that the panel has made and look forward to working with the scrutiny panel to make things better with the tribunal processes. Just to answer the question that she had in her speech, between 2014 and 2023, there were 335 claims of discrimination across all protected characteristics, but only 48 of those claims went on to be heard by the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal. Of those claims, 12 were in relation to racial discrimination, 18 were in relation to sex discrimination, 1 was in relation to age discrimination, and 17 were in relation to disability discrimination. I do think it is important to remind members that there are several protected characteristics, and also just to Deputy Catherine Curtis's point, that sexual harassment within the workplace is also covered within the discrimination law, so sexual harassment cases would indeed be heard by the tribunal, and of course can cause a lot of hurt and upset as well as financial loss. But I will go ahead now with what I had prepared, which is, as the Assembly will be aware from my comments paper in relation to Deputy Ferry's second amendment, I cannot accept it, and I do ask the Assembly to reject it. I won't repeat my comments, and I really do hope that members have read the paperwork associated with this proposition and the amendments, because the detail is incredibly important here. I do think it's important that the Assembly does have a clearer understanding of why the Deputy's amendment undermines the rationale behind my proposition. First, my proposition rests squarely on the recommendations of the Independent Employment Forum. The Forum brings a varied perspective from its employer, employee, and independent members. There is an equal balance between them. The Forum's recommendations relating to compensation were unanimous, and that is a crucial point. They were made after a consultation process and careful analysis of its findings. We should not ignore the importance and the significance of the Forum's conclusions, and it's extremely rare for this Assembly not to accept the Forum's recommendations. And I do encourage the Assembly to think what message it sends out, in particular relation to this recommendation, if we don't accept it. Second, the Deputy bringing the amendment says he can see no justification for such an increase in the maximum award level. Sir, the Forum, in my view, presents a compelling justification in its thorough report, particularly in relation to comparisons of compensation awards in other jurisdictions. By no means would Jersey be an outlier in comparison to others. And I actually think Deputy Dublé also provided some further context around that, and also the personal consequences to people around that. And I think it's important that we remember that it's important that we maintain our status as a jurisdiction that takes discrimination very seriously. Third, the amendment seeks to equate the maximum award for financial loss in discrimination cases with the jurisdiction of the Petty Debts Court in breach of contract cases, which is currently £30,000. So the message that would send out is that this Assembly views the failure of an employer to compensate an employee for holiday or notice pay as being on par with a serious act of discrimination, the consequences of which can be devastating for an employee. The proposal to limit an award to £30,000 or 52 weeks' pay, whichever is the lower, would preclude employees on less than the current average annual median salary, calculated by Statistics Jersey in summer 24 at nearly £45,000, from potentially being able to be properly compensated for their loss. That cannot, sir, be the right approach for this Assembly to take. It's important that the Assembly understands the way in which compensation for financial loss works in Jersey. A claimant must prove to the tribunal's satisfaction the amount of their financial loss. The tribunal requires actual evidence. It will not pluck an arbitrary figure out of thin air. In many cases, a claimant's financial loss will be limited to a few £100s, Only in a few cases will the figure run beyond that. That much is clear from the figures published in tribunal judgments. Finally, sir, most discrimination claims fail at the tribunal, and of those that do succeed, very few indeed represent multiple claims of discrimination. The idea that, in agreeing to this proposition unamended, this Assembly would somehow be opening the floodgates to excessive and overwhelming numbers of claims is, in my view, unfounded. The fundamental premise of my proposition is to deter bad employer behaviour, encourage the best employment relations, to make sure that employers and employees know what their rights and responsibilities are, with good access to sources of advice and assistance, and value the dignity and welfare of all of our community. Sir, this proposition is not bad for business, as the Deputy's amendment and others have suggested, but it is anti-discrimination. I urge members to reject the amendment.
Very much. I have one member who is listed to speak before calling upon Deputy Ferry to respond as to whether we push forward before the lunch adjournment. I'm in members' hands.
So could I propose the adjournment? It wouldn't be right, I don't think, for anyone to shoehorn their speeches in, so I know there probably are other speakers.
Very well, the adjournment is proposed. The Assembly seems favourably disposed. We stand adjourned until 2:15.